Hello everyone. This is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto Uzumaki was cursed by luck after a stormy night and his fate became tied to Hanabi, Naruto times Hanabi times Kurama times Hyuga clan, Part 2. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up. And subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. Naruto sat in one of the taller trees of Konoha along a very thick branch. He had his hood up and the only thing that was visible about him was the glint of the kunai he held. A small shadow skirted down below him. The figure ran across the forest floor, dodging fallen branches and overgrown roots. Naruto watched as the figure came to a sudden stop and leaned against a tree. Naruto's hand slowly went up to his ear. "I have the target in my sights," Naruto said. The sound of static reached Naruto's ears. "Has the identity been confirmed?" Kakashi's voice rang out through the small earpiece. Naruto looked down and saw that the target remained in the same place. Naruto sent chakra into his eyes to confirm the figure's identity. He looked away slowly and his hand went back to his ear. "Identity has been confirmed. I repeat, identity has been confirmed. Request to confront the target," Naruto said. Naruto waited several seconds for the message to get through the static. "Negative. Sasuke and Sakura will confront the target. Provide support when necessarily," Kakashi said once again. Naruto grunted angrily and turned his headset off. Naruto watched as Sakura and Sasuke shot out of the trees and towards the figure. The figure ducked underneath Sasuke and latched onto Sakura's body. Naruto watched as the figure proceeded to scratch Sakura. Sakura's screams of pain ranged out of the forest. Sasuke shot back to Sakura in an attempt to help Sakura. The figure jumped off of Sakura and slid under Sasuke. It then bonded into the forest. Sasuke growled at the creature's escape and bounded into the forest after it, leaving Sakura lying on the forest ground crying over her wounds. Naruto, after laughing his off, turned his headset back on. "Kakashi-sensei, Sakura is down. Sasuke has proceeded to pursue the target. Request to give support to Sasuke," Naruto said. "Request denied. Sasuke can handle the target. Give assistance to Sakura and bring her to rendezvous point," Kakashi said before signing out. Naruto grunted and then jumped out of his tree. He approached Sakura to find her whimper over her wounds. Naruto sighed and then roughly threw Sakura over his shoulder. She started to scream and protest as Naruto carried her fireman style through the forest. Eventually, after several seconds of running, the two arrived at a large clearing. Kakashi leaned against a tree while casually flipping through the pages of his latest porno books. When he looked up, he saw Naruto roughly drop Sakura into the middle of the clearing and jump up onto a tree. Kakashi shrugged and then went back to reading his book. Several minutes into their waiting Sakura, Naruto and Kakashi looked up as they heard a loud boom and a giant smoke cloud started to rise into the air. They then heard a chorus of screams and meows. Naruto let out a short laugh while Sakura looked on with worry. Kakashi ignored the smoke and continued to read. After 20 minutes of waiting, Sasuke entered the clearing with a smug cat under his arm. Sasuke was covered in scratches, burns and soot. He walked up to Kakashi and shoved the cat into his arms. "Mission complete," Sasuke said with a pained voice. Kakashi gave an eye smile and held the cat in his arm. "Good, now let's head back to the village," Kakashi said. As Team 7 walked back to the forest, Naruto decided to get a closer look at the cat. The cat was Tora, cat of the wife of the daimyo of Fire Country. Somehow this cat would escape a highly secured compound and end up near Konoha. Then the daimyo's wife would request a mission from Konoha to retrieve the cat. Now the cat has been a bane in every genin's life for the past 30 years. Its stealth and speed were off the charts. It would manage to hide for hours before actually getting caught. It has since been assigned a D-rank mission to capture the cat. Naruto continued to stare at the cat. The cat turned and growled at him. "The hell are you looking at?" A feminine voice ranged out. Naruto looked around in confusion at the sudden voice. He started to look around but saw no one else except for his team and the cat. He turned back towards the cat and pointed a finger at it. "Is that you?" Naruto said. Naruto's team looked at him in confusion as he let out a low meow. They then shook it off as Naruto just being Naruto. Yes, it's me, you retard. I'm actually surprised you can understand me. Are you a cat? That would explain the whiskers. Tora said. Since you signed the Panther clan and Panther are in the Panthera genus who are related to cats, you can talk to animals which are related to jaguars. Kyuubi said. Whoa, Kyuubi. Never thought you were so knowledgeable. Naruto thought. Yeah, I have been sealed for about 200 years, so you start to learn stuff. Now stop looking retarded and respond. Kyuubi said. Naruto looked back up and saw the cat staring at him with a ticked off look on its face. Sorry. No, I am not a cat. It just through some special circumstances that I can talk to felines. So why do you run away from the daimyo's wife so often? Naruto asked. The cat let out a pissed off hiss when it heard the daimyo's wife. Because that bitch likes to torture me. Every single time she hugs me, I swear I can see Kami. She dresses me up in stupid outfits and flaunts me like I am a golden statue. Honestly, I want to kill that bitch in her sleep, but I doubt the daimyo would like that. Tora said. Naruto nodded in understatement. He would see how hard the daimyo hugged Tora and the remnants of the outfits Tora would rip off when she escaped. They were horrible. Naruto. Are you okay? Kakashi suddenly asked. Naruto shot up to his full height and looked at Kakashi with confusion in his eyes. Why do you ask? Naruto said. Well, you have been growling and meowing at Tora for the past 10 minutes. Kakashi said. So, if I want to talk to cats, I will talk to cats. Now stop interrupting my conversations. Naruto said before ducking back down to continue his conversation with Tora. Kakashi blinked owlishly before shrugging his shoulder. He figured that he shouldn't be too concerned. Eventually Team 7 arrived at the Hokage Tower and gave the cat back to the daimyo's wife. Sakura and Sasuke managed to find pleasure in the pain the cat was given due to the tightness of the hug it was currently in. Naruto felt extremely bad for the cat but dare not speak out against the daimyo's wife. After the she left, Kakashi turned to his team. Alright team, you are dismissed until tomorrow. Kakashi said. Sakura, Sasuke and Kakashi made their exit. Naruto was about to but was stopped by Hiruzen. Actually Naruto, I need you to stay here. I have some very important information to tell you. Hiruzen said with a sigh. Naruto shrugged and stood in front of the Hokage's desk. Hiruzen signaled him to sit down and Naruto took a seat in one of the many comfortable seats that littered Hiruzen's office. Hiruzen sighed once again before starting his talk. As you know, Anko was promoted to the rank of Jonin the week I was away on a diplomatic trip to Suna. As soon as she was promoted, she was assigned AS class missions. Now normally the objective of these missions are classified, but due to this special issue, I'm able to tell you. She was to assassinate the Rock Daimyo. Now normally I wouldn't give a new Jonin this mission, but I was unaware of it. Hiruzen said. Well, why is this so important that you need to interrupt my training time? Naruto said, irritated. Hiruzen sighed and then took a necklace out of his pocket. He put it gently on the table. Naruto looked down and saw it was Anko's snake necklace. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. It was a setup. As soon as she entered, she was screwed. Anko's dead Naruto. Hiruzen said. Naruto sat emotionless in the chair. Hiruzen sat worried in his chair. He knew that Anko and Naruto had a very close relationship and this would be heavy on his psyche. Naruto suddenly broke out in a fit of laughter. The laughter wasn't full of mirth or fun but desperation and denial. That's a good one, Oji-san. You almost had me there. Naruto said. Hiruzen sighed and dug into his pocket once again. He pulled out a bloody headband and sat it on the table. I'm sorry Naruto. Hiruzen said. Why, you can't be serious, Oji-san. Naruto said. I'm afraid I am Naruto. Hiruzen said while lowering his head. Hiruzen waited several seconds for Naruto to reply but heard nothing. Suddenly he heard the explosive slam of his doors and looked up. He saw Naruto charging out of his office with a full lightning cloak activated. Hiruzen's eyes widened when he sensed Naruto moving towards the council room. Hiruzen dashed out of his room with his armor on. The council of Konoha was made of the clan heads of Konoha and the leaders of the civilian businesses. Everyone was assembled but were now waiting for Hiruzen. They felt an extremely large chakra signature moving towards them and tensed. Suddenly Naruto busted through the doors and landed on all fours. You are all going to die. Naruto said in a low whisper that still managed to reach through the whole room. The council looked on with confusion. What are you talking ab? The man wasn't able to finish because he found Naruto's scimitar through his throat. The rest of the council looked in shock as Naruto decapitated one of the council members. Naruto picked up the head and threw it into a wall. Anbu, contain him. One of the civilians shouted. Several Anbu surrounded Naruto with their various weapons drawn. Naruto growled and launched himself at the closest Anbu. The Anbu prepared his sword for a strike but was surprised as it started to shake violently in his hands. He watched as his sword flew out of his hands and into Naruto's. Naruto appeared in front of the Anbu and impaled him with his own sword. The rest of the Anbu looked in shock that their teammate had been killed so easily but quickly got over it. Several Anbu started to go through hand signs and sent several fireballs towards Naruto. Naruto zipped between the fireballs, ducking and weaving to avoid the deadly projectiles. Naruto appeared in front of an Anbu. Naruto threw a punch at the Anbu. The Anbu maneuvered around Naruto's punch and attempted to put him in the grab. But instead he had several hundred thousands volts of electricity pushed into his body. He fell to the ground dead. His lightning cloak is powerful. Cover yourself in a thin cloak of wind chakra. The Anbu captain said. Naruto growled and launched himself back at the remaining Anbu. While in midair he went through several hand signs. Lightning release. Zap cannon. Naruto yelled. A giant ball of electricity came flying out of Naruto's mouth. The ball landed in the middle of the group and exploded in a bright flash of sparks. 3 of the Anbu managed to jump away with no injuries, but the last 2 had the excess electricity enter their bodies. They were slightly paralyzed and rendered useless. Naruto reached into his jacket and started launch hundreds of kunai, shuriken and senbon at the 3 remaining ninja. The ninja had trouble approaching Naruto as they literally had to dodge a wall of weapons. After what seemed like thousands of weapons, Naruto stopped. He started to go through hand signs again, but the Anbu tried to stop him. Lightning release. Chain lightning. Naruto yelled. Naruto held his hand up and a bolt of lightning hit the closest kunai and watched as the bolt of lightning jumped to the kunai. The Anbu had to dodge as several bolts of lightning would randomly jump to any weapon that was near them. After several minutes the lightning stopped, leaving some slightly scorched Anbu. They looked up to confront Naruto but saw that he had disappeared. They stood silently hoping that Naruto was not near them. Suddenly a sword came flying out of one of the Anbu's chest. The remaining 2 Anbu turned around and saw Naruto standing behind the Anbu with his sword through his chest. Naruto withdrew his sword and kicked the dead ninja toward the 2 remaining Anbu. He jumped into the air and once again started to go through more hand signs. Lightning release. Running beast. Naruto said. Naruto landed on the ground and slammed his hands onto the ground. 2 panthers made out of lightning chakra appeared out of the ground. They charged at the 2 Anbu with a roar. The 2 beasts impacted the Anbu and exploded into a massive amount of sparks. The Anbu fell to the ground, twitching. Naruto turned to the council with his sword drawn. I'm going to kill every single one of you. Naruto said. Naruto crouched to the ground and prepared to confront the council. Suddenly Naruto felt a strong pressure on his neck. He fell to the ground unconsciousness. Hiruzen stood over Naruto with a sigh. He looked towards the ninja council and saw that they were actually impressed at Naruto's display. The civilian council, however, were cowering in fear. What the hell was that, Hiruzen? One of the civilian council members said. I told him about Anko. Those 2 had a very close relationship, so he snapped when he heard that you assigned her to the mission. Hiruzen said. That does not excuse him from trying to kill us. Another person on the civilian council yelled. Although I'm impressed with the boy's fighting skill, I have to agree with my counterparts. This boy tried to assassinate us and shall be punished accordingly. Hyuga Hiyashi, leader of the Hyuga clan, said. A wave of agreement swept through the council. I say we execute the boy. One of the council member yelled. Arguments exploded in the council room, decided whether to execute the boy. Silence. You all know we cannot assassinate the boy. The Kyuubi would escape immediately. Hiruzen said. I propose you hand the boy over to me for emotional training. He will learn how to control himself in instances like this. Danzo said. No, I refuse to give the boy to you. Hiruzen yelled. Then what punishment will the boy receive, Hiruzen? We cannot allow this boy just to walk free. He must receive a punishment. Homura said. Hiruzen sighed as he realized the reality of his former teammate's words. He could not allow Naruto to go unpunished for this crime. It would seem biased and would only end him and Naruto in trouble. Hiruzen released another sigh as he slowly started to rub his temples. I propose that Naruto will be suspended from our ninja activities for an undetermined amount of time while he takes a psyche exam. During this exam he will have all of his chakra sealed off. If he fails, then he is to be put off of ninja duty until he has shown improvement. Are all in agreement? Hiruzen said with a heavy tone. Whispers broke through the council room as the different branches of advisors conversed with each other. After several minutes of talking, it seems like they had made their decision. Danzo stood up and faced the Hokage. We of the council have agreed on the terms, Danzo started. Hiruzen smiled at this. But only if that he fails the psyche exam that you hand him over to me for emotional training. Danzo said. Whispers broke out the room as Danzo's demand sunk into the mind of everyone in the room. Hiruzen suddenly shot up from his seat and slammed his hands upon his desk. Silence. He yelled loudly. Immediately a dense silence permeated the room. Hiruzen slowly began to look around the room while looking in each of the occupants' eyes. I for one am getting tired of your stubbornness, Danzo. I've already denied your request and I will deny it again. Naruto will be examined by a certified Yamanaka psychiatrist and we will decide for there. And that is final. Hiruzen said with a harsh voice. Unlike last time, no whispers came from the lips of the council. Most were scared to speak, fearful that if they did they would have to fear Hiruzen's wrath. Once Hiruzen saw that no one had any objections, he sat back down with a heavy sigh. You are all dismissed, Hiruzen said while waving his hand at them. After several seconds of hesitation, the council members slowly started to file out the room. After several minutes, all that was left was Hiruzen, his hidden Anbu, and the unconscious Naruto. Tora, put a basic chakra blocking seal on Naruto until I can get Jiraiya here. Also take him the NRP. Ninja Rehabilitation Program, Hiruzen said. A ninja wearing Anbu-style clothes and a Tora mask. The figure made several hand signs before lightly tapping its finger against Naruto's forehead. The Anbu then slung Naruto over its shoulder before disappearing with a shunshin. Hiruzen sighed once again before putting his head into his hands. Naruto's POV. All I could see was darkness. Darkness encompassed my business as I was completely swallowed by it. My head was filled with two words. Anko's dead. Those words bounced painfully against my skull until I gained a headache. But the headache was the least of my pain. The pain I was feeling in my chest hurt worst. The pain of losing a loved one stung worse than any headache I have ever had. Worse than any stab wound, any of my breaking bones or destroyed organs. My mind subconsciously registered that the darkness that was surrounding me was lightening up. I was slightly aware that I was now sitting in what seemed to be a puddle of water. I briefly opened my eyes and realized I was inside of my mindscape. The pipes of the sewer were now back, but they seemed to be in a terrible condition. The water level seemed to have risen several inches. I could briefly hear the Kyuubi tried to speak to me, but the words didn't register in my mind. I didn't feel like hearing his wisecracks or stupid comments about me being pathetic. I didn't feeling like dealing with his shit. I felt Kyuubi wrap one of its tail around me in a comforting way. I flinched at first before eventually succumbing to the warmth it was emitting. While it was no substitute for the pain I was feeling, it helped dull it slightly. As I lay wrapped in the tail of the great Kyuubi, I slowly drifted to sleep. Third POV. Kyuubi looked down at Naruto as the boy slept in his tail. Now usually Kyuubi would never be caught doing something like this, but he knew the pain the boy was going through. The pain of losing a loved one was great. Kyuubi was left depressed for several weeks after the sage finally passed away. Kyuubi laid his head down against his paws as he gave Naruto one last final glance. He then fell asleep too, unaware of the light blue eyes that were staring upon the very strange sight. Yakumo shot up from her chair as she cancelled her mind transfer jutsu. Hiruzen saw that she was finished her jutsu and sat up with apt attention. The trio were currently in Hiruzen's office, which had a bed located in it which Naruto was currently occupying. Yakumo Yamanaka wrote several long notes down upon her clipboard before addressing Hiruzen. Hokage-sama, after reviewing Uzumaki's son memories and emotions, I have concluded that he is mentally fit. Although he shows signs of high-level depression at the news of Anko-san's death, his psyche still remains intact. If anything, I would recommend him a therapist and a little time off of ninja duty. Yakumo said. Hiruzen sighed in relief at the news. He quickly dismissed Yakumo before walking over to Naruto. What am I going to do with you, Naruto? Sometimes Naruto really hated his life. It has been a week since Naruto returned to his team from his little vacation. His welcome was indifference from Sasuke and Sakura. Kakashi welcomed him back with an eye smile. But that wasn't what bothered Naruto. What bothered him was his newfound paranoia. Naruto had to constantly fear of being kidnapped once again. He had managed to his house to the point where it was almost impossible to enter unless you were Naruto. If it wasn't enough to deal with the paranoia of being kidnapped, the D-rank missions Naruto was forced to go on were pure torture. Even though they were a quick way to get money, they were useless. D-rank missions really showed the laziness that inhabited the civilians of Konoha. Most couldn't even paint their own fence or get their groceries. It was very demeaning to a ninja to be doing mere chores. Speaking of D-rank missions, Team 7 was currently in the Hokage's office trying to get one. The third Hokage was currently shuffling through his files. Let's see. You can paint Shimino-chan's fence. Or you could walk the Inazunka's dogs. Are you Ko? Hiruzen went quiet when the files he was currently holding transformed into a pile of ashes due to Naruto's lightning bolt. I refuse to do any more of these useless chores. Naruto grunted out. Kakashi's sweat dropped at Naruto's outburst while Sakura and Sasuke nodded their heads in agreement. They both were tired of the missions also and wanted to get something more excited. Hiruzen looked down at the pile of ashes that decorated his desk and looked up at Naruto. His eye was currently twitching in aggravation. He then took a heavy breath and looked at Naruto with a sickeningly sweet smile on his face. Since you are so eager to advance in your ninja career, I will give you a mission that is mandatory for all genin to complete. Kakashi, I am assigning you and your team to a raid. Hiruzen said. Kakashi dropped his books when he heard Hiruzen said raid. His eyes showed a massive amount of shock. Hokage-sama, with all due respect, don't you think they are too early in their career to go on a raid? Kakashi asked. This mission is mandatory for all ninjas, so why not get it out of the way? Now there will be no objections. Here are your mission information. You have a week to complete the assignment. Hiruzen said while throwing a scroll at Kakashi. Kakashi caught the scroll with a sigh. Sakura looked at him with confusion in her eyes. Kakashi-sensei, what is a raid? Sakura asked. I'll tell you later. Meet me at the village gates in an hour. Be prepared for a week-long mission. Make sure to bring weapons. Kakashi said before disappearing in a shunshin. Team 7 dashed out of the room, wanting to get prepared for their first C-rank mission. Naruto stood in his room taking account of his weapons. 3,000 kunai, Senbon and kunai. 50 explosive tags. 10 chakra pills. Sharpening stone. 50 yards of chakra string. Naruto continued to list off his supplies. Hey dumbass, are you going to war or something? Kyuubi said. Naruto growled at the nickname. There is no such thing as being too prepared. Naruto thought back. Naruto sealed his supplies into a ceiling tattoo. He then of the door. After activating his security, he started to walk through the village. Naruto watched as the civilians carried on with their lives with unaware of the danger that stood outside of the walls of Konoha. Ignorant and pathetic villagers. Naruto thought with a sneer. Hey, don't forget you were once like them. An ignorant and innocent child unaware of the dangers that always surrounded you. Kyuubi said. Yay, but I was 5. These people are grown adults. Naruto thought back. After having his little conversation with Kyuubi, Naruto arrived at the gate. The only person that was present was Kakashi, which surprised Naruto immensely. Naruto walked up to Kakashi and sat down next to him. Hello Kakashi-sensei. Naruto said politely. Hello Naruto-kun. Where is your equipment? Kakashi asked. Naruto lifted his arm and showed the ceiling idea that ran down his arm. Although confused about where Naruto got the tattoo, Kakashi understood its use. The two then descended into a comfortable bout of silence as Kakashi read his book and Naruto closed his eyes to get some rest. After several minutes of comfortable silence, Sasuke and Sakura arrived. They both had book bags that seemed to be filled to the brim with items. Sakura looked extremely nervous while Sasuke had an aura of confidence. Once Kakashi saw his team was here, he put down his book. Okay team, we will be going on a raid. There is a bandit group that has been bothering one of the villagers that lay near the border of Fire Country. Our mission is to eliminate them. And by eliminate I mean kill. Kakashi said with a serious tone in his voice. Sakura and Sasuke looked on with shock. Naruto remained stoic on the outside but was actually pretty surprised. Kakashi I smiled at his students. But do not worry. Your amazing sensei will be with you along the way to help you through the process. Kakashi said in an attempt to calm his genin. It partially worked as Sakura and Sasuke seemed to calm down. Now follow me. We should be there by tomorrow night. We will rest when the sun goes down. Move out. Kakashi said while bounding into the forest of Konoha. Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto dashed into the forest after him, preparing themselves mentally for the challenge that awaited them. Team 7 landed in front of a pair of gates. These gates belong to the village of Kishimoto, often nicknamed Hino Tani or Fire Valley. It was called this because it was located on the edge of a gigantic valley. Kakashi turned to his team with a serious look in his eye. Now we will split up for scouting and gathering information on the bandits. Sasuke and Sakura, I want you two to stay around the market district and I will look for information in the residential area. Naruto, I want you to stay in the slums. With your experience there, you will be able to connect with people easier. Kakashi said. Team 7 nodded as they understood their orders. We are to meet in front of Town Hall in 4 hours. If you get into any type of trouble, spike your chakra and I will be there immediately. Now go. Kakashi said. Sakura, Sasuke and Naruto dashed into the city. Naruto immediately knew when he hit the slums of the village. The difference between the regular village and the slums were night and day. The streets were crowded with peddlers, beggars and thieves. Smoke pillowed from the chimneys that littered the buildings, seemingly building a dark cloud that seemed to mirror the mood of the village. All in all, it was home for Naruto. Naruto walked through the streets trying to stay inconspicuous as possible. He would run through alleyways, duck through shops and hide in people's shadows. This allowed him to gather information stealthy. Did you hear what they did to Shizuki's daughter? Yeah, I heard they took her as payment. What a shame. I heard they took her directly to their base inside of the forest. Well then I doubt she is alive or wants to be alive right now. Naruto stored the memory in the back of his mind and entered one of the bigger and shiftier bars of the village. The bar was filled with dirty-looking individuals, burly men drinking massive amount of alcohol and prostitutes trying to find business. Naruto sat down in the booth chair that was located in the corner of the bar. The bartender slid down to him with a curious look in his eyes. Aren't you a little too young to be drinking in a bar, boy? The bartender asked in a gruff voice. Naruto looked at him with a hostile look in his eyes. Aren't you a little too broke to be passing up business? Naruto asked. The bartender looked at the boy for several seconds before shrugging in defeat. So what do you want? The bartender said. Just bring me a glass of water since you're so worried about my health. Naruto said in a mocking voice. The bartender let out a laugh before pouring Naruto a glass of water. He sat it down on the counter and leaned on it while looking at Naruto. So why are you here, boy? You don't look like a native. The bartender asked. Naruto took a long sip on his water before replying. I was looking on some information about a certain bandit group that has been terrorizing the village. Naruto said. The bartender's eyebrows rose as he heard the information. He grabbed Naruto's empty cup and filled it back up. He then placed it back in front of Naruto. Naruto took a long sip before his eyes shortly widened. The water is poisoned. Naruto said. No shit, Sherlock. Kyuubi said. Naruto sat the glass back down on the table and looked at the man. I think I may know. Why don't you come to the back so we can talk privately? The bartender said. Naruto nodded and walked behind the bar. The man led him into a room and closed the door behind him. Suddenly 5 men jumped out of the shadows that populated the room. Naruto could obviously tell these men were untrained bandits. I was expected a girl this time, Kaim. One of the bandits spoke out. The bartender walked in and looked at Naruto with a sickening look in his eyes. Shut up, Kimaru. You can use him for labor. The now named Kaim said. The bandits suddenly looked at Naruto as they heard him snicker. Sometimes I have to thank Kami for idiots like you. The patrons of the bar suddenly heard an array of screams rang from behind the door Naruto had just gone through. Of course they shrugged this off as it was a natural occurrence for them. It made even more sense since bartender had dragged the boy back into the back room. They were all however shocked when they saw the boy who they thought was doing the screaming, casually walk out of the bar while holding Kimaru over his shoulder. They were shocked even further as Naruto walked out the front entrance of the bar whistling a jaunty tone with a huge smile on his face. Eventually the patrons got over the shock and returned to their drinks. After all, weird shit happened in this city all the time. Sakura was very annoyed right now. First of all, she was miles away from her home village, completely separated from regular human civilization. Second, her sensei had put her with Sasuke-kun, but then he decided to split up. Now she was stuck in a village she didn't know, trying to gather information about a group of bandits she would have to kill. Killing the bandits had been at the front of her mind for a while. It would be the first time she would have to kill anyone. Images would flash through her head as her mind tried to comprehend how the experience would be. It had caused her to daydream and have nightmares at night. It wasn't a very good experience for her. Sakura had been searching for information for several hours. She would periodically ask civilians blatantly if they knew any information about the bandit group. She was met with frightened features and silence. After a while, she gave up and decided to see if the rest of her team was in front of town hall. She trudged through the down with a depressed expression etched onto her face. After several minutes of walking, she finally arrived at the front of town hall. She saw Sasuke and Kakashi. Her expression immediately brightened when she saw her, Sasuke. She ran over and enthusiastically greeted them. "Hey Sasuke-kun, Kakashi-sensei." Sakura yelled. Kakashi gave a curt nod while Sasuke grunted. Sakura stopped in front of them and looked at them in confusion. Where's Naruto?" Sakura asked. Kakashi was about to reply but something caught his attention. He heard murmuring coming towards his direction. He turned and his face took on the expression of shock. Naruto was walking straight towards them with a heavy-set man thrown over his shoulder. Sakura and Sasuke turned around and saw their teammate carrying a man over his shoulder. Naruto walked up to his team and looked at them with an innocent smile on his face. "Hey guys, I got us a very potent source of information," Naruto said excitingly. Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke sweat dropped at Naruto's nonchalant "less." "Well, it is getting a little late. I guess we can rent a hotel room and I can give you an impromptu interrogation class," Kakashi said. Sakura and Sasuke slowly nodded while Naruto wholeheartedly agreed. Kakashi led them through the market district. During the walk, Sakura and Sasuke would sneak glances at Naruto's happy figure. To the both of them, their teammate was an enigma. He sometimes acted carefree and innocent. Yet sometimes they saw a part of him that was downright evil. It was like in a flash of lightning he would change. He would become explosive. It was weird. To Sakura, this scared her. She felt unsafe around her teammate. She always knew in the back of her mind that Naruto wasn't as he always seemed. He wasn't the carefree and innocent boy that could make even the most seasoned veteran let his guard down. No, he was a wolf in sheep clothes. He could kill her in a second and she knew that. To Sasuke, Naruto confused him and angered him. Like Sakura, he noticed that he had two sides to him. Sasuke knew that if push came to shove, Naruto would shove his sword into his chest without a single second of thought or remorse. Sasuke knew that Naruto was stronger than him. This would hammered into his head by the massive amount of spars that Naruto would literally decimate Sasuke. This scared and angered him. He never wanted anyone to have the power of death over him. Never again. Not after Itachi. Team 7 finally arrived at a hotel. While it wasn't very classy, it was comfortable and homey. Kakashi paid for through room and led his team to a room. He tied to still unconsciousness man to a chair. He then turned to his team. "Okay, let's start with our lesson. When your target is unconsciousness, it is wise to awaken him as painfully as possible. I would recommend an electrical shock. It is painful and is guaranteed to awaken someone," Kakashi said. Kakashi went through several hand signs and then clasped his hands together. For several seconds, he seemed to be in a deep state of concentration. He then slowly started to move his hands. An electrical current seemed to be jumping in between his palms. He slowly moved his arm and placed it on the man's shoulder. Team 7 watched as the man literally jumped out of his seat. His eyes snapped open and he screamed in pain. He slammed down into his chair and looked around frantically. His eyes locked with Naruto and a snarl came to his mouth. You pathetic little brat. I will kill you the moment I get out of this chair. I will slaughter you and your whole family UPMPH. The man was silenced by Kakashi slamming a ceiling tag over his mouth. Most of the times when your target comes out of his unconsciousness state, he will be pissed off. This is when you slap a ceiling over his map. This shuts him up and all you have to do is wait for him to calm down. Kakashi said while turning around. Kakashi's sweat dropped as he observed his team. Sakura and Sasuke seemed to be slowly nodding while following his words. But Naruto had a large pair of glasses on and was currently taking a huge amount of notes on his notepad. Where he got it from, Kakashi did not know. After several minutes of wild, muffled screams from their captured prey, the man relaxed. While he was still shooting extremely dirty glares at Naruto, he had stopped screaming obscenities towards him. When Kakashi saw this, he quickly ripped off the ceiling tag. Now we start the questioning. Kakashi said. Kakashi turned to the man with a hard look on his face. The man returned that look tenfold. Who are you? Kakashi shot off. You. The man answered back. Kakashi narrowed his eyes. His hand shot up and implanted itself on the man's shoulder. The man started to scream in pain as thousands of volts of electricity shot through his system. Kakashi kept his hand on the man's shoulder for several seconds before letting go. The man was left panting hoarsely in pain. Kakashi gave the man an eye smile. Now I am going to ask you again. Who are you? Kakashi said. The man remained silent for several seconds while staring at Kakashi. Kakashi sighed and then raised his hand. Electricity arced around his fingers, doing an intricate dance of power that seemed to be able to intimidate the toughest of foes. The display of power managed to scare an answer out of the reluctant man. Kimaru Kishimino. Kimaru said. Kakashi I smiled at the answer. Good, it looks like we're getting some progress. For the next hour, Kakashi would repeatedly ask Kimaru about the bandit camp. Their locations, numbers, strengths, weaknesses and leader. The bandit camp was somewhere near 200 strong. They were led by a low-class nuke nin Furmizu. They had very little training but were armed to the teeth. Once Kakashi finished interrogating the guy, he knocked him out. He then turned to his team with a serious look on his face. Now that we have interrogating our target, we put the information to use. Due to their numbers, I think a stealth attack will work best. We will attack them using the cover of night. Now since we still have quite the amount of time before nightfall, we can use this time to finally get something to eat. Now would you like Sensei to treat you to dinner? Kakashi asked sweetly. Sasuke grunted, which Kakashi took as a yes. Sakura, seeing that her crush had agreed to the dinner, wholeheartedly agreed with him. Naruto though politely declined. I am sorry Kakashi-sensei, but I am not feeling very hungry. Naruto said. Complete bullshit. Kyuubi said. Kakashi waved off the excuse. Don't worry Naruto. Just be back here by 8. We will need some time to prepare. Kakashi said. Naruto nodded and walked out of the door. He then slowly started his trek through the village. All through the village, he could see the effects that the bandits had on the village. The market was filled with inflation. Products that were normally cheap and affordable for most were now almost 5 times as high. Beggars littered every street corners. Whores and prostitutes stood on the streets, trying to earn a quick buck by selling their bodies. Children ran through the streets, secretly pilfering money from the unaware merchants. It was a very sad sight to Naruto. It always amazes me how one person's greed can equal to another's grief. Naruto thought to himself. Naruto suddenly stopped when he felt something tug on his jacket. He looked down and saw a young girl tugging on his jacket. She had brunette hair and looked to be around 10. Her hair was matted with dirt and she basically had rags for clothes. The rags barely covered her private parts. All in all, it was not a pretty sight. Can you spare any money or food? The girl said in a soft voice. Naruto's eyes lightened as he knelt down to the girl. He took a quick inspection of her and saw she was greatly malnourished. It looked as if she hadn't eaten in days. Naruto looked at her with soft eyes. Where's you parents? Shouldn't they have food? Naruto asked. Naruto immediately knew this was the wrong question to ask. Tears immediately started to pool in her eyes. The tears slowly started to trail down her cheeks. Naruto's hand slowly came up and wiped away the stray tears. The girl smiled at the gesture before finally speaking up. My dad abandoned me and my mother was Keiki. The girl suddenly started to break down as the memories of her mother's death came crashing down onto her. She collapsed to her knees as the painful memories bombarded her psyche. Naruto, seeing the young child was troubled, wrapped her in a warm embrace. Naruto felt the girl tense but relax after several seconds. The girl continued to cry and hiccup for several seconds while Naruto still embraced, which made a very strange scene for the pedestrians that passed by. Eventually the girl recovered from her momentary breakdown. Naruto, seeing that the young girl was deeply troubled, decided to help her out. Why don't we get you something to eat? Naruto paused as he realized he never got the girl's name. The young girl saw that and decided to help Naruto out. My name is Amai. The newly named Amai. Naruto grinned at the name and started to lead the girl to one of the closer food stands. Naruto entered the stand and immediately knew that it was a ramen stand. His eyes brightened and he dashed to a seat with Amai in tow. He slammed down in a seat with Amai doing the same. She looked dazed at the sudden increase of speed. 5 miso ramens for me and 1 for my friend. Naruto shouted joyfully. Naruto, after ordering the ramen, looked at Amai to see how she was doing. He could see her shyly trying to avoid eye contact with anyone in the stand and make herself unnoticeable. Don't worry Amai-chan, I'll make sure nobody will hurt you. Naruto boasted loudly. Amai blushed lightly at the Chan but smiled brightly when she heard Naruto's declaration. She nodded and visibly became less tense. Naruto grinned at this and decided to try and start a conversation. So Amai-chan, tell me about yourself. What do you like and dislike? Do you have any hobbies? Naruto asked curiously. Well, my name is Amai obviously. I'm 11 years old. I like rain, flowers and snow. I dislike hot weather, bandits and perverts. My hobbies are collecting flowers. What about you Naruto-san? Amai started off shyly but slowly got more confident as her speech went on. Well, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm 13 years old. I like lightning, thunder and ramen. I dislike deserts, hot weather and rapist. My hobbies are sitting out in thunderstorms and training. Naruto said cheerfully. Amai looked confused at Naruto's almost obsessive behavior towards lightning but had no time to question as their food was put in front of him. Yay, finally. Naruto said while suddenly taking out a pair of chopsticks. Where he got them from, Amai didn't know. Amai then watched in amazement as Naruto seemed to destroy his 5 bowls of ramen. Her shock continued to grow as she heard him order another 5 bowls. Naruto looked over to Amai only to see her ramen untouched and her looking at him with shock written in all caps all along her face. What's wrong Amai-chan? You don't like ramen. We can go somewhere else if you want. Amai could hear the disappointment in Naruto's voice and it hurt her. She started to frantically wave her arms in front of her. No, it's not that Naruto-san. It just I have never seen anyone eat ramen like you. Amai said. Naruto gave an embarrassed smile before apology. He then gestured to the untouched ramen that remained in front of Amai. Amai looked at it with a questionable look. She had never had ramen before, so this would be a new experience for her. She slowly broke apart her chopsticks and dipped them into the broth. She swirled the noodles around her chopsticks and brought them up to her mouth. Her mouth enclosed around the stick surrounded by noodles. Amai closed her eyes as the flavor of the noodles bombarded her taste buds. She let a moan of satisfaction as she found that she actually enjoyed the meal. She quickly dipped the chopsticks back into the ramen and swirled some more onto her chopsticks. Seeing that he had successfully converted someone to the goodness of ramen, Naruto sat back in his chair with a content smile. For the next 2 hours, the two sat in the ramen stand, sharing conversations about random occurrence and just enjoying themselves. Eventually though Naruto had to leave because of his mission. Do you have to leave Naruto-kun? Amai had gotten comfortable enough around Naruto to be able to use the kun honorific. Of course the process was sped along by Naruto constantly pestering her to do so and the occasional tap on the head. But eventually she got there. But now the two must separate. Unfortunately Amai-chan I must. I promise I'll see you tomorrow. Naruto said. Amai frowned but nodded nonetheless. Naruto gave her a quick hug before dashing out of the stands, leaving Amai alone. Not. What I didn't know was that Naruto was currently standing at the back of the stand and going through hand signs. He slammed his hand on the ground and a clone of himself seemed the form for lightning. The clone was an exact replica of Naruto. Naruto looked at the clone with a harsh glare. You are to trail Amai and make sure nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing happens to her. Make sure to stay well hidden. Naruto said in a strict tone. The clone gulped in fear and nodded to its master. Naruto, satisfied with the response, disappear a bolt of lightning. Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke were currently sitting in their hotel room, waiting for the arrival of Naruto. Kakashi was off in a corner of the room reading his book. He would occasionally let out small perverted giggles that infuriated and disgusted her. Sasuke was going over his equipment for the upcoming raid. Sakura had started to do the same but got caught up, watching Sasuke. Naruto suddenly appeared in his room with the roar of thunder. Kakashi book flew into the air as he jumped into a defensive stance. Sakura shrieked in fear and hid behind Sasuke. Sasuke also jumped in fear but soon recovered. All of them relaxed however when they saw it was Naruto. What the hell Naruto baka? You scared us, Sakura said. Naruto shrugged and then sat on his bed. He looked at Kakashi expectantly. So are you guys ready? Naruto asked. Kakashi gestured to Sasuke's weapons, asking the question of where was his. Naruto grinned and unzipped his jacket. What Team 7 saw was the closest thing to a walking armory. Hundreds of Senbon, kunai and shuriken seemed to line to his jacket. Kakashi was further surprised when he noticed that Naruto's jacket had several seals that probably contained several more hundred weapons. After seeing Kakashi's approving nod, Naruto zipped his jacket back up. Kakashi rounded up his team and headed out of the front door. They walked through the village at a civilian's pace. They reached the village guys and were allowed to leave. As soon as they stepped out of the village border, they rocketed towards the forest. They dashed into the forest. Okay, we know that bandit camp is approximately 1,000 yards from the village. When we get to the camp, Naruto will cover the east, Sakura will cover the west, I'm to the north and Sasuke to the south. Our mission is to kill not to stun. Everyone in your sight is marked. Show no mercy or it will cost you your life. Kakashi said through the wireless headset. Sasuke nodded with a determined look in his eyes while Sakura seemed to hesitant. Naruto looked bored. Just another day of your average ninja. Killing bandits, saving damsels in distress and being a badass. Naruto thought to himself. Shut up, brat. I'm trying to sleep. Kyuubi roared out loud. Looks like the grumpy old fox finally woke up. Have any nice dreams? Naruto asked. Yay, I was tearing you and your whole village apart. I rolled around in your blood as if it was my own personal bath. Kyuubi said. That sounds pleasant. Wish I could have taken part. But now I have some things to do, so shush. Naruto said. Team 7 suddenly broke apart with Naruto going right, Kakashi going left, Sasuke advancing while Sakura fell back. Sakura started to slow as she saw the glow of a gigantic campfire. She slowly crept through the trees and entered into a gigantic clearing. It was clearly man-made from the sight of uneven stumps and patches of dead grass. Hundreds of bandits were seen mulling around the camp. Sakura looked in shock. The man they interrogated didn't say there was this many. We seem to have been misinformed about their numbers. Switch to Plan B. Stealth attack only. Handle the stragglers first. Then handle the drunks or asleep. If possible, avoid crowds. Engage. Kakashi's voice rang through the microphone. Sakura gulped in fear and slowly pulled out a kunai. She spotted a man that was walking towards the woods. She guessed the man had to use the bathroom. She slowly made her way towards the man. She ended up behind him as he unzipped his pants. She heard a sigh of relief as the noise of running water reached her ears. Sakura slowly got closer and closer as the man continued to pee. She was about a foot away from the man before she raised her kunai. Her hands started to shake as images of the man's dead body reached her mind. Her hands came down and the blunt end of the kunai impacted against the man's temple. The man came crumbling down in a pile of flesh. I can't do it. Sakura said while shaking. She knew that they were ordered to kill on sight but she just couldn't. She dragged the man further into the woods and covered his body with leaves. She then advanced into the camp. She reached a tent and sneaked into it quietly. She saw 3 men asleep. The smell of alcohol reeked from the men. Sakura pulled her kunai out again. She raised it and once again her arm started to shake. Flashes of blood and the smell of death somehow reached her. Sakura slammed her kunai against the temple of each man, hoping it would keep them unconscious for a little longer. Sakura continued this process for the next hour. She would sneak into tents, knocking out the drunk bandits and slamming her kunai against the unconscious ones. Eventually she finished her side. She started to make her way into the center, hoping that her team had already met up. Her hands reached up to her headset. My side is CL. Sakura was cut off by a hand coming over her mouth. Sakura craned her neck and her eyes widened as she saw the man who she had first knocked out was currently holding her. You bitch. I should kill you right now. But instead I'm going to have a little fun. The man said. Sakura's eyes widened as he felt the man grope up. She bit his hand and screamed loudly. Naruto was currently having the best time of his life. He was completely in his element. The provided perfect coverage for him. Naruto saw 4 men stumbling off away from the main camp. The men were obviously beyond intoxicated. They could barely walk straight and had to lean on each other just to keep moving. Looks like I found myself some targets. Naruto said with hidden glee. Naruto jumped down from the tree he was perched in and silently dashed towards them. Kenshi was currently having the time of his life. He had joined this bandit group when he realized that it was the best option for him. They treated him like a brother and he was forever grateful for that. Kenshi was currently stumbling back to his tent with his 3 best friends, Kimi, Asuna and Michi. They were drunkenly blabbering about their past exploits. Remember that time when we worked for that Gato guy? Kenshi asked with a drunken slur. The 4 friends busted out in a fit of laughter. Yay, we got so much for that town. Kimi said. The 4 then went into another fit of giggles. The 4 however stopped when they heard a loud snap of a branch. They turned towards the sound with a suspicious look. Who is that? Kenshi asked with his slur. Nobody answered. Kenshi started to inch forward as his 3 friends stayed back. Kenshi got to the edge of the forest and peered into the inky darkness. Is anybody out? Whoa. Kenshi was interrupted as he was suddenly yanked into the bushes by an invisible force. The 3 bandits slid into a sloppy defensive stance. Kenshi, what's wrong? Kimi asked. The 3 got no response except for the ruffle of leaves. Suddenly the bush started to shake violently. A body was sent flying up into the air. The 3 bandits looked in shock as the dead body of Kenshi was flying through the air. Them being distracted by the flying dead body cost them their lives. Naruto dashed out bushes with his sword drawn. To the bandits, he was all just a blur. They saw a white blur approach them and then retreat into the bushes. They were confused until they felt a slight pain on their neck. The pain increased as they felt a wet sensation run down their neck. They looked down and realized that their throats were slit. They realized that they were dying because of the massive amount of blood loss they were losing. Of course that process was sped up when Kenshi's dead body suddenly dropped onto top of them, opening the wounds even further and twisting their neck in a regular angle. They fell to the ground dead. Naruto grinned from his hiding spot. Nicked all 3 of their external jugular vein. I'm getting better at this. Naruto said to himself. Naruto looked back to the bandit camp and grinned loudly. He was going to enjoy this. Naruto had been killing bandits for the past hours. He would separate them from the main pack, sneak into tents or just slaughter groups of them. To others, this event would be scarring, but for Naruto it was fun. Naruto just gotten finished slaughtering a tent of bandits when he heard static come through his headset. My side is CL. There was a sudden silence as no sound came out of his headset. Naruto waited for several seconds for the person to continue but heard nothing. Suddenly a scream tore through the night, alerting Naruto and any remaining bandits. Ah crap. Naruto said. That scream was Sakura and he knew that it probably alerted the rest of the bandits. It seems like Plan C was in action. Executing Plan C. Kill all in sight. Stealth not necessary. Meet up with closest comrade. Naruto said through his headset. Naruto walked out of the tent and saw the remaining bandits running towards the scream. Naruto grinned and spiked his chakra to a tremendous level. The bandits turned around as they felt the pressure of Naruto's chakra on them. They were greeted by the sight of pure electricity covering Naruto. He had the outline of a beast. His eyes were glowing a bright yellow. The sky above him seemed to darken. He grinned and took a deep breath. He then released a deep breath that shook all the bandits to their very core. Naruto disappeared from the bandits' sight. All in all, they were 100 strong and none of them could locate Naruto. They suddenly heard the rumble of thunder that instantly confused them. It had been a clear night 5 minutes ago. Suddenly a flash of lightning struck the middle of the group of bandits. Bodies were thrown into the air as the lightning impacted the ground. The still living bandits towards where the lightning struck and saw Naruto crouching. He suddenly dropped his sword and started to go through hand signs. The bandits started to back away, but Naruto was too fast for them. Naruto finished his hand signs and called out his jutsu. Lightning release. Massive discharge. Naruto screamed out. The bandits felt another enormous spike of chakra that seemed to crush them with its pressure. Then mayhem broke out. Tendrils of lightning came flying out of Naruto's body, incinerating the closest bandits. The ones that weren't incinerated were killed by the massive amount of excess electricity in their bodies. Only the farthest and the luckiest got away with only being paralyzed. Unfortunately, Naruto was not a man of mercy. He killed them with his sword, cutting their throats and impaling them with his sword. That was relaxing. Naruto said to himself. And people said I'm evil. Kyuubi said. Naruto scoffed at the comment. You go destroying mountains and attacking village just for your own amusement. I killed these men because they were terrorizing that town. See the difference? Naruto said. Nope, not really. Murder is murder. Kyuubi said. Naruto sighed and decided to ignore Kyuubi. He suddenly got a weird look on his face. Oh, I forgot. Sakura was screaming. Should probably go help her. Naruto said. Naruto then started to walk towards the scream while listening a jaunty tone. Shouldn't you hurry up? Isn't your teammate in trouble? Kyuubi said. Nah, she can handle herself. Naruto said. Sasuke was very conflicted at the moment. His body was filled with a mixture of excitement, anxiety and fear. This would be the first time he would ever kill anyone. Flashes of the massacre that occurred years ago would occasionally come to his. These memories seemed to strengthen his resolve even more. Sasuke never wanted to feel as weak as he felt that night. His grip tightened around his kunai as the memories flashed through his mind. His eyes turned steely. Unlike his teammates, Sasuke didn't get so lucky. He didn't find any bandits wandering off from the camp. He had been slowly circling his side, waiting for an opportunity for an hour. Suddenly he heard static come through his headset. My side is CL. Sasuke heard a crash. He waited several seconds for the person to continue but heard nothing. He then shook it off as a glitch. Sasuke continued scouting the camp waiting for his opportunity. Sasuke suddenly a loud scream. He cursed as he immediately knew that the scream was Sakura's. Sasuke was about to switch to Plan C but someone beat him to it. Executing Plan C. Kill all in sight. Stealth not necessary. Meet up with closest comrade. Sasuke heard Naruto said. Sasuke dropped his hands and steeled his emotions. He started to go through hand signs. He stopped at the last one and took a deep breath. He then let loose a massive fireball towards the retreating bandits. The last thing they saw and felt was a flash of flames and the intense flames only a jutsu could make. Kakashi was currently very bored. This mission, while tough for his mission, was a breeze for him. The bandits were so drunk and stupid that they were literally falling towards him. All Kakashi had to do was throw a well-placed kunai and send a shadow clone to drag the bodies into the forest. All in all, it was a pretty easy mission for Kakashi. Though one thing Kakashi worried about was his team. A team had never been assigned to a raid for their first C rank. He was scared one of them would freeze up and that would cost them their lives. But he knew he couldn't leave his post. After an hour of killing, Kakashi heard static come through his headset. My side is CL. The voice suddenly cut off. Kakashi heard a loud thump that worried him. After several seconds of waiting, Kakashi began to grow worried. Suddenly a scream ripped through the night that alerted Kakashi. Kakashi's heart started to pound as he realized that the scream was from Sakura. He was about to take off but heard a voice come through his headset. Executing Plan C. Kill all in sight. Stealth not necessary. Meet up with closest comrade. Kakashi heard Naruto said. Kakashi sighed and then jumped out of the tree he was sitting in. He started to go through several hand signs before grabbing his wrist. Slowly the sound of chirping birds became evident in the air. The retreating bandits turned around and saw Kakashi charging at them with a yell. Naruto was dashing through the bandit camp, cutting down anyone in sight. He was dashing towards where he last heard the scream. Any bandit in his way stood no chance as Naruto relentlessly cut to the ground. Naruto left every one of them dead or with fatal injuries. After running for several minutes, Naruto reached the opposite end of the camp. He looked around but saw nothing but abandoned tents. Naruto suddenly heard another scream coming from one of the tent. He dashed into it with his weapon drawn. He saw one of the bandits with his dangerously close to Sakura's mouth. Juin had been having a very bad day. First he woke up late and had to wait to get a turn with one of the captured girls. So he ended up getting dirty 23rds. Second, the other bandits had stolen his portion of lunch while he was off having his fun. Third, a pink hair bitch had knocked him out and covered him with dirt and leaves. But now everything was looking up. He was about to rape the aforementioned pink hair bitch, and due to how young she looked, he could guess she was a virgin. That meant she was tight. Oh, I am going to enjoy this, Juin said to himself. Juin tried to force his into Sakura's mouth, but she would continuously move her head. Sit still, you little whore, Juin yelled. Sakura continued to move her head as Juin pressed his against her skin. Juin growled and let her arms go. He then released a punch that sent her crashing to the ground. Juin then bent down to pick Sakura up. Juin was inches away from Sakura before he felt a weird breeze against his hand. He heard a thump and looked down. His eyes widened when he saw that his hand was now separated from his arm. Juin started to scream but was silenced by a sword to the throat. He fell to the ground dead. Sakura looked up and saw Naruto standing over the now dead Juin. Tears piled into her eyes as she lunged for Naruto. Her arms wrapped around Naruto and she sobbed deeply into his chest. Naruto stood awkwardly as Sakura continued to sob. After a while, Naruto slowly pushed her away. Sakura, you need to get yourself together. We executed Plan C. We need to meet Sasuke and Kakashi in the middle of the camp, Naruto said to the hysterical girl. I thought you hated her. Why are you acting so nice? Kyuubi asked curiously. I do. But we are on a mission right now and we need her to get her shit together, Naruto said. Naruto looked down at Sakura and saw that she was still hysterical. He sighed in anger. This, Naruto said. Naruto's hand came down to Sakura's neck. She fell gently into Naruto's waiting arm. Naruto threw her over his shoulder and dashed out of the tent. Kakashi had just reached the center of the camp. He had slaughtered every single bandits that stood in his way. He saw no sight of his team, which confused and scared him. Kakashi was about to take off back into the camp to find his team before Sasuke came into his sights. Kakashi saw that Sasuke was physically okay and relaxed. Sasuke, are you okay? Kakashi asked. Sasuke gave a slow nod and Kakashi sighed as he knew the killing had somewhat affected Sasuke. Kakashi decided to deal with it once they got back to the village. Have you seen Naruto or Sakura? Kakashi asked. Sasuke gave a negative, which made Kakashi even more nervous. He gave off a long and tired sigh. Kakashi almost jumped out of his skin when he heard the loud crash of thunder coming from directly behind him. He felt a strong breeze that almost blew him off his feet. Kakashi turned around in a defensive position with a kunai drawn. He, however, relaxed when he saw that it was Naruto with Sakura thrown over his shoulder. Kakashi's eyes asked the question about what happened to Sakura, which Naruto replied to with a shrug but indicated she was fine. Kakashi let out a sigh of release. Okay, officially our mission is complete. Now all we need to do is to get rid of the camp, Kakashi said. Naruto's eyes brightened at this. Kakashi-sensei, may I do the honors? Naruto asked. Kakashi's eyebrows raised at the question. After a bit of thinking, Kakashi shrugged his shoulder saying it. Naruto handed Sakura over to Kakashi. You and Sasuke may want to step back, Naruto said. Kakashi and Sasuke retreated several feet back. Naruto waved his hand towards them and they took several more steps back. Naruto continued waving his hand and they took even more steps back. Naruto stopped when they were at the edge of the forest. Naruto, satisfied with their distance, started to go through hand signs. The whole sequence took him 30 seconds. Once he was finished, he slammed both his hand onto the ground. Lightning release. Heaven's wrath. Naruto said silently. Storm clouds started to form above Naruto as sparks came flying off of his skin. The storm clouds managed to cover the whole training ground. Naruto raised his sword to the sky as clouds started to cover. Kakashi and Sasuke looked up towards the sky and saw the gigantic clouds covering the camp. Kakashi looked confused while Sasuke looked amazed. Kakashi was wondering what Naruto was about to do. He got his answer when he heard the huge clap of thunder that seemed to shake the very earth itself. Suddenly a huge flash of light blinded both Kakashi and Sasuke, making the two avert their gazes. When the two finally managed to look back, they were greeted by a shocking sight. The bandit group that seemed to cover several hundred yards was completely gone. There was a cylinder-shaped crater that was several yards deep. Naruto stood in the middle of the crater with his clothes smoking and his sword still held up. Suddenly the two heard a loud crack. They looked towards Naruto and saw him staring in shock. His sword had broken. It seemed to excessive amount of chakra and electricity had overloaded. Naruto began to weep tears of sadness as he looked down upon his broken sword. The sword was slightly melted and broken into metallic shards. Tears continued to fall down his cheeks as he dug a small hole which he buried the shards in. He pocketed the hilt and got up. Naruto stood to his full height and stretched. He casually jumped out of the crater and walked to his shocked teammate and sensei. He stopped in front of them and looked at them with a confused look on his face. There was no evidence on his face that his beloved weapon had just broken. "What's wrong, guy? You act like you seen a ghost," Naruto said. Kakashi quickly broke out of the shock and sighed. He knew by now that Naruto was full of secrets. "Nothing, Naruto. Let's just head home." Team 7 was currently being sent off by a very gracious village. They had saw the bright flash of what they described to be lightning and went to investigate. They discovered that where the bandit camp used to be was now a gigantic crater. Using the rumors that circled the town was able to conclude that Team 7 was ninja and figured they took care of the bandits. They were now forever thankful. "We cannot thank you enough for what you have done for us," the mayor of the village said. Kakashi gave an eye smile and rubbed the back of his neck. "Ma, don't worry about it. It's just our job," Kakashi said. After getting an array of goodbyes, suddenly a loud scream ripped through the crowd. "Naruto-kun," a voice said. Naruto turned around and saw Mai pushing through the massive crowd of people. She eventually reached the front and Naruto saw that she had several bags packed. "Naruto, I want to go with you. And I won't take no for answer," Mai said with a determined look on her face. Naruto had told her he was going to leave tomorrow and that saddened her greatly. All through the night, she had argued with herself. Eventually she came to the decision that this town had nothing to offer. She wanted to go with Naruto. And she wouldn't take no for an answer. Okay. Naruto said nonchalantly. Team 7 and Mai looked in shock at the sudden answer. Naruto, are you sure you about this?" Kakashi asked. "Why not? My apartment is big enough for the both of us and I wouldn't mind having a roommate," Naruto said. Hearing the definite yes, tears started to pool into Mai's eyes. She ran towards Naruto and wrapped him in a massive bear hug. Naruto grinned and wholeheartedly returned the hug. He sealed Mai's bag into his ceiling tattoo and looked at his team. "Well, it's time to go home. Use the code names Naruto," Kakashi said. Kakashi could hear Naruto sigh over the headset. "White lightning." Naruto grunted out. Naruto could basically hear Kakashi smiling through the headset. "Yes, Black Thunder," Kakashi said. Naruto could hear Sakura and Sasuke laughing at the stupid nicknames Kakashi had chosen for them. "If you ever and I mean ever send us to catch this cat again, I will castrate you and feed your testicles to the cat," Naruto said. Naruto heard nothing but silence. He then heard Kakashi take a loud gulp. "Is that a threat, Naruto?" Kakashi said. "No, it's a promise. I will not, and I repeat, will not catch this cat again. If I'm forced to do so again, you will pay dearly," Naruto said in the utmost serious voice. Naruto heard Kakashi sigh in defeat on the other end of the line. "Fine. Let's just finish the mission," Kakashi said before ending the connection. Naruto grinned and reached behind him to grab his sword. But frowned when he realized that his sword was still gone. Naruto felt weird without the weapon. It didn't feel right. Naruto quickly shook the thoughts out of his head and bounded into the forest. He stayed low to the ground in order to track the almost invisible track the cat had left. Eventually he found the cat in a wide clearing, cleaning itself. Naruto decided to forego stealth and jumped into the clearing facing Tora. Tora, I thought you said you weren't running away anymore. Naruto said in his feline tongue. Tora looked up at him lazily and with a heavy sigh. I'm getting old, Naruto-kun. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I decided to give the chase one last time. And I needed my greatest opponent to challenge me. So are you up for it? One last whirl? Tora asked curiously. Naruto saw the excitement that was barely hidden under Tora's calm demeanor. He sighed and shrugged. Why not? Sure, Tora. But I'm not holding back. I'll give you a 30-second head start. Naruto said. As soon as Naruto finished his sentence, Tora disappeared from Naruto's sight. Naruto whistled in shock at the sudden speed Tora showed. Wow, she's been holding back. Naruto thought to himself as he began to slowly count down. 5. Tora leapt up a tree and dashed across its limbs. 4. Tora leapt from tree to tree, showing agility on it could exhibit. 3. Tora backtracked herself and started to set up several tracks to confuse Naruto. It was a futile effort, but one Tora knew could save her milliseconds. 2. Tora dashed out of the foliage of tree and into a clearing. She quickly dived into a nearby pond to erase her scent before going back into the woods. 1. Naruto said with a smirk of anticipation. Tora continued to push herself even as she felt her muscles tire. 0. Ready or not, here I come. Naruto called out. Tora froze as she heard Naruto's voice call out to her through the forest. She then started off with even more speed as she felt desperation fill her mind. Naruto crouched on all fours on the forest ground. He took a deep breath before disappearing in a white blur. Tora heard a crack of thunder and immediately knew that it was Naruto. She tried to speed up, but her muscles refused to cooperate. Tora's eyes widened as she felt a rush of wind come flying past her. Her eyes widened even further as she saw Naruto standing in front of her. Time's up, Tora, Naruto said with a grin. Tora sighed and then slowly walked up to Naruto. Naruto got down on one knee to pick up Tora. Tora suddenly leapt from the ground and attached herself onto Naruto's face. She began to scratch Naruto's face. Naruto started to scream and run around in pain as Tora continued to use his face as her own personal scratching board. Eventually Naruto jumped into the lake, forcing Tora to jump off. He quickly propped himself above the surface of the water and looked at Tora with a pissed-off look on his face. What the Tora? What was that for? Naruto yelled. Naruto swore he heard Tora laugh. But instead she gave a bored shrug. I don't know. Just thought it would be fun. Tora said casually. Naruto's eye started to twitch as the anger slowly began to build up in him. Instead of releasing though, he sighed and smiled. He slowly walked up to Tora and took her in his arms. He immediately felt her loosen and cuddle into his body. He eventually heard her fall asleep. Naruto eventually found his way to his team. Kakashi was leaning against a tree reading his book while Sasuke and Sakura did their daily process of Sakura pestering Sasuke and Sasuke ignoring her. They all looked up, however, when they heard Tora let out a loud purr. Kakashi gave him a look which Naruto completely ignored. Sasuke and Sakura stood with anger in eyes. That cat never listened to anybody except for Naruto. We won't have to deal with Tora anymore, Naruto said as he continued to rub Tora. Kakashi looked shocked at the bold claim. Konoha Ninja had been dealing with Tora for years and now suddenly Naruto said they won't. Naruto. I seriously doubt that. I have been catching Tora since I was a genin, Kakashi said. Naruto just let out a small laugh before walking past his team and towards Konoha. Kakashi shrugged and followed him. Sakura and Sasuke then followed them. After a short walk through the forest and into the village, Team 7 arrived at the Hokage Tower. After walking up the long flight of stairs, they arrived on the top floor where the Hokage Tower was located. The secretary waved them in and they stepped into the office. They saw Hiruzen leaning in his chair smoking his pipe. His eyes brightened as he saw Team 7 walk in with Tora wrapped comfortably in Naruto's arm. Ah, Kakashi. I see your team finished the mission, Hiruzen said. Kakashi nodded. Hiruzen turned on his intercom and ordered his secretary to bring in the daimyo's wife. Team 7 felt the floor beneath the shake as the daimyo's wife approached the door. The door suddenly was blasted off its hinges as the daimyo's wife. The daimyo's wife was a very heavy-set woman. She was obviously used to a very extravagant lifestyle due to her weight and choice of clothes. The daimyo's wife immediately ran over to Naruto. She tried to snatch Tora out of Naruto's hands, but Naruto dodged her. What is the meaning of this? The woman yelled angrily as Naruto continued to dodge her attempts to relinquish Tora from his hands. Unfortunately for her, Naruto was trained in ninja arts and was not allowing her. Naruto, you can give Tora back to her now. Hiruzen said nervously. He knew how easily this woman could influence the daimyo and didn't need Konoha's fun to be cut right now. Not until I have a word with this woman. Naruto said. Hiruzen looked at him as if he was crazy. Surely Naruto knew the consequences that his current actions would have on the village. It's okay, Hiruzen-san. I'll teach this heathen a lesson. The woman said. She then turned to Naruto with a harsh glare in her eyes. Naruto returned the glare 20 times stronger. Now boy, you will treat me with respect. Do you know who I am? The woman said. Naruto let out a short chuckle and looked at the woman with a, "Are you serious?" Yes, I know who you are, and honestly I don't give a. Tora is your pet, not a doll. Don't dress her up and don't strangle her with your man arms. Don't smother her with pillows and blankets, don't feed her candy, and for the love of God don't send ninja to retrieve her when all she doing is taking a stroll. She is a cat, you stupid woman. They like their freedom. And if you don't get that, don't have any more pets. Naruto said. The occupants of the room stood in shock. Nobody, and I mean nobody, had ever talked to the daimyo and his family, but yet Naruto had just done so. The daimyo's wife started to sputter and she tried to come up with a response. No one had ever talked to her like that, even as a child. After finding nothing to come back with, she turned to Hiruzen. My husband will be hearing about this. This boy shall be reprimanded and hardly. The woman said before roughly snatching Tora out Naruto's hand and storming out of the room. Hiruzen and the rest of Team 7 watched as she pushed her way through the lobby and towards the stairs. Hiruzen sighed as he watched the woman rush down the stairs. He then turned to Team 7. Naruto. Do you know what you just did? You may have just ended the daimyo's support to Konoha. Hiruzen said with a tone of tiredness in his voice. That bitch deserved it. That is no way to treat an animal. Naruto said. Now usually I would agree with you if it was anyone else, but we are talking about the daimyo's wife. To put it frankly, the man is whipped. If she pesters him enough, Konoha could deal with some harsh consequences. Hiruzen said. Naruto honestly really didn't care. This woman was abusing his summon's kind and he would not allow that. So I will be taking 3/4 of your mission income as punishment, Naruto. Hopefully this will teach you a lesson. You are dismissed for the day. Hiruzen said while returning to his paperwork. Naruto, expecting a similar punishment, looked unaffected by the harsh punishment. Kakashi did not look shocked at the punishment. He knew the consequences of Naruto's actions and expected a punish as such. Sakura and Sasuke looked shocked. 3/4. Wasn't that a little excessive? You're dismissed for the day. Hiruzen dismissed Team 7 with a wave. Kakashi turned to his team and told them they were dismissed from training. Naruto dashed out of the door, leaving the rest of his team in the Hokage's office. Naruto dashed through the village, towards the outskirts of it. He stopped in front of a house. The house was very simple. 3 stories with several windows and a door. But to Naruto, it was his home. Naruto walked through the door and was immediately greeted to the smell of freshly made ramen. He smiled as he found his way to the kitchen. There he found Amai in an apron standing over a fresh pot of boiling water. She was humming a soft tone as she slowly spun the ladle held in her hand. Naruto got a sneaky grin before crouching to the ground. He slowly began to sneak towards Amai as she stood unaware of the imminent danger behind her. Naruto finally stood directly behind him and waited. Naruto suddenly scooped Amai in his arms. Amai let out a small squeak as Naruto spun her around the room. At first she was afraid, but that soon disappeared when she heard Naruto's laugh. Instead she started to pout at being tricked so easily. Naruto spun her around the room several times before placing her back in the kitchen. He then took a seat at the dinner table. So how's your day been, Amai-chan? Naruto asked while looking at her collect herself. Ever since Team 7 had returned to Konoha with Amai, Amai had been slowly getting used to her new life with Naruto. Amai had been put through a psychological test conducted by Yamanaka. After that, she had been cleared as an official civilian of Konoha. Now her days usually consisted of her working at her new job at Ikiruka's Ramen and taking care of Naruto. It was relaxing. Ayame didn't have me doing much today. She still tries to baby me. How was yours? Amai said while recovering herself from Naruto's surprise attack. Boring. Did a little team training. Caught Tora. Again. Cursed out the daimyo's wife and got 75% of all my future paychecks taken away. Naruto said nonchalantly. Amai froze at the last part of the sentence. She slowly turned to Naruto with a horrified look in her eyes. What? Why in the hell did you curse out the daimyo's wife? Do you know how much trouble you could get into? Naruto. Amai screamed when she saw that Naruto seemed to be falling asleep. Naruto shot back up at the scream. Huh, what? Naruto said. Amai groaned and sighed. She should have known that Naruto wouldn't take this situation serious. Why did you threaten the daimyo's wife? Amai asked slowly. She immediately saw Naruto's face sour. That bitch was mistreating Tora. So I decided to give her a piece of my mind. I guess it didn't taste so good. Naruto said. Amai laughed at Naruto's comment. Naruto suddenly jumped out of his seat and ran towards the door. Gotta go training. Call me when the ramen is done. Naruto said while dashing towards the door. Wait, Naruto. Amai suddenly heard the door slam close, signaling that Naruto had left the building. I have something for you. Amai finished. Naruto sat under a tree Indian style. His eyes were closed and he seemed to be in a heavy state of concentration. A thin layer of what seemed like yellow chakra was surrounding Naruto. The leaves around Naruto seemed to be slowly rising and falling around Naruto. Naruto slowly raised his arm and pointed a finger at the nearest leaf. Suddenly a tiny spark shot out of the and impacted against the nearest leaf. The leaf immediately crumbled into dust. The spark jumped off the crumbled leaf and found its way to the next leaf. The spark quickly managed to crumble that leaf too. By this time, a thin sheet of sweat covered Naruto's head. The process continued for the next 10 minutes as Naruto slowly decimated the floating leaves that surrounded him. At what seemed to be the 75th leaf, the spark went out. Naruto released a huge sigh. Quickly wiped the sweat that covered his forehead. Damn, making electricity conduct to non-conductive objects sure is a bitch. Naruto said to himself. Naruto suddenly twisted his head as he heard the soft sound of feet running against the ground. Naruto. Naruto heard Amai yelled. He looked up and saw Amai running towards him while trying to conceal something behind her back. Of course the object was larger than her, so her efforts were in vain. From what Naruto could see, the object was a long metallic staff with a spiked end to it. Amai finally reached Naruto and stood in front of him shyly. Naruto, I realized that you were sad about your sword breaking and you like weapons, so I decided to get you one. Now I know you like electricity, so I decided to get you this. Amai said while thrusting the weapon at Naruto, almost skewering him. Naruto's sweat dropped at the weird way the weapon was presented to him. He looked down and decided to inspect the weapon. The weapon immediately reminded him of a lightning rod. It had a very simple style. A 4-foot-long metal pole with a spiked end. Naruto reached out to grab the weapon. After his hand got within several inches of the weapon, he heard it hum. He looked down and saw tendrils of what seemed like electricity come flying out of his hands and into the lighting rod. The rod suddenly came flying into Naruto's hand. Naruto automatically gripped the rod tightly as he felt the humming increase. Naruto gazed in amazement at the way the weapon was reacting to his body. He swung it attentively, trying to get a feel from the weapon. Even though the swings and thrusts were sloppy, the weapon felt nice in Naruto's hand. Amai watched nervously as Naruto looked over his new weapon. She knew that a spear-like weapon was a huge difference from Naruto's scimitar and hoped Naruto wouldn't immediately reject the gift, but her hope started to rise however when she saw the way Naruto looked at the weapon. Suddenly she saw Naruto disappear and felt herself rise into the air. She felt 2 strong appendages wrap around her and spin her several times. I love it. Thank you so much, Amai-chan. Naruto said while spinning Amai around in their backyard. A small blush covered Amai as she realized how Naruto was holding her. Her blush was short-lived however when Naruto dropped her near the house. This is perfect. It feels just so right in my hands. Naruto said while staring at his new weapon. Amai grinned at the fact that Naruto appreciated her gift. Good. Also, the ramen is ready. I'll go in and start making our bowls. Amai said while walking back to the house with a slight skip in her step. Naruto watched with a happy grin as Amai skipped into the house. As soon as the door shut behind her, Naruto's grin fell. He quickly spun around with his new weapon poised in his hands. He started pointedly at a certain part of the forest. You have 3 seconds to get out of that tree or I will burn you and all of your little friends. Naruto said. Naruto heard nothing and a light grin spread across his face. 1. Naruto still heard and saw nothing. 2. Naruto's grin started to slowly grow as no one came out of the trees. Naruto saw a slight rustling of the leaves. He saw a young boy jump out of the tree and landed in front of him. Naruto recognized the boy from the academy. He was Shino Aburame. If one were to look closely, they would see tiny insects crawl in and out of Shino's skin. How long have you been aware of my presence? Shino asked in a monotone voice. Naruto walked up to Shino with his new weapon still poised to strike. A smirk seemed to be etched on his face. I don't think you are in the position to ask questions. What I want to know is why the hell you have been spying on me? Naruto asked. Shino remained quiet for several seconds as Naruto continued to circle him. Eventually Naruto grew tired of waiting. He thrust his sword at Shino. Shino tried to jump back but felt himself hit something. He looked up and saw a clone of Naruto standing behind him. The clone shot his hands up and grabbed Shino. Naruto grinned as his clone successfully captured Shino. Shino briefly struggled in the clone's grip but soon found out that the clone was too strong. Naruto placed the spiked end of the rod several centimeters from Shino's chest. Now I am going to ask you this once more. Why the hell were you spying on me? Naruto said. Shino remained quiet for several more seconds. Naruto, seeing this, started to slowly move the rod towards Shino. That finally got Shino to start talking. My bugs sensed a larger than normal chakra signal coming from this training ground. We were surprised to find out it was another one of my classmates. We were spying on you because it is important for a ninja to know information about their teammates and enemies. Shino said in a calm and even voice. Naruto nodded at the explanation and lowered his weapon. He snapped his fingers and the clone dismissed itself in a small shower of sparks. I accept your explanation. Now get thee out of my backyard. Naruto said while walking towards his house. Shino remained standing where he was as Naruto continued his journey back to his house. Uzumaki-san. Shino's voice rang out. Naruto stopped in his walking. He turned around and saw Shino still standing in the same position. What? Naruto asked curiously. I would just like to inform you that I am nothing like my other classmates. I have seen the way the villagers treat you and I find it very illogical. Shino said. Naruto looked confused at the sudden confession. He really never expected any of his classmates to admit anything like this. While it was true he didn't have much interaction with Shino, he was truly surprised by the statement. And why are you telling me this? Naruto asked cautiously. My bugs and I have sensed a very deep power inside of you. I have a feeling that you will be a great ally to have in the future. I am just merely taking the beginning steps to becoming allies. Shino said before disappearing into a cloud of bugs. Naruto watched as the bugs flew into the forest and disappeared from his sight. Did I just make a friend? Naruto asked himself. No, dumbass. He is obviously using you. Kyuubi said. Naruto shrugged at Shino's and Kyuubi's comments. He decided to put the two in the back of his mind and go get some ramen. Naruto ran through the forest of death with a small grin on his face. Every couple of seconds a loud feminine laugh rang through the forest, informing him he was still betrayed. Naruto's grin spread even further as he increased his speed. Naruto was jumping from tree to tree, trying to throw of his pursuing. He suddenly heard the sound of a kunai slicing through the air. He veered right, just in time too because 20 kunai crashed into his previous position. Naruto stuck to a nearby tree and took a quick look at his surroundings. While he was looking, he didn't notice the quiet sizzling of paper bomb. The tree exploded, throwing Naruto to the forest floor and showering him in splinters. The paper bomb left him dazed and confused. Naruto closed his eyes and groaned in pain as thousands of splinters rained on him. He tried to get up but found that his arms were pinned and a foreign weight was upon him. His eyes shot open and he found Anko's grinning face staring at him. "Looks like I win once again, Naru-kun," Anko said with a mischievous tone in her voice. Naruto gave a sigh of defeat and gave a small grin. "One of these days, I'll beat you, Anko-chan." "One of these days," Naruto said. Anko grinned and then lowered her head closer to Naruto's. "In your dreams, Gaki," Anko said softly. Naruto let out a small chuckle before lifting his head to kiss Anko. She slowly lowered hers to meet his. The two were centimeters away from each other before a loud blaring noise interrupted them. Naruto shot up from his bed in a defensive position, covered in sweat. He looked around and saw the cause of the noise was his alarm clock. He gave a sigh of defeat before shutting off his alarm clock. He swung his legs over his bed and sat in a hunch position on his bed. "Anko-chan," Naruto whispered while fingering the Anko's necklace. A single tear fell from his eye. Naruto's schedule soon start to repeat. It would go something like this. Get up, eat, go to his team, get a mission or two, team training, come home, eat, train and sleep. Every once in a while Shino would show up and the two would have conversations about one another's team and their training. From what Naruto had gathered, Shino's team was made for tracking. Their training consisted of finding and capturing a large array of targets that started with Tora and ending with catching their sensei. But now Naruto was in the middle of sparring with his team. The team was Sakura and Sasuke versus Naruto. Kakashi had immediately deemed Naruto too skilled to go one-on-one with any of his teammates, which angered Sasuke a lot. Naruto sighed as he lazily ducked under a stray kunai while blocking a low kick from Sasuke. While Naruto admitted he was a huge reason for it, Team 7 was pathetic. Their actions did not complement each other and would most likely get each other killed if put in group combat. Naruto grabbed Sakura and flipped her over his shoulder. He then quickly did a high front flip in order to dodge the rushing Sasuke. Sakura landed on Sasuke and the two were sent tumbling on the ground. Naruto landed softly on the ground and watched as his two teammates struggled to get up from the ground. That's enough for today. Plus I think our guest would like to see Naruto." Naruto heard Kakashi say. Naruto turned around and saw an Anbu standing next to Kakashi. The Anbu had a pigeon mask on. "Naruto-san, Hokage-sama requests your presence. He says it is of high importance." The Anbu said. Naruto sighed and lowered from his defensive stance. He walked up to the Anbu and stood next to him. He was however surprised when the Anbu hesitated to shunshin to the office. He looked up in clear surprise. The Anbu looked down at him and Naruto could basically see the nervousness painted across the man's face. "I have heard stories of other Anbu who have attempted to shunshin without your permission. I wish not to repeat their misfortune," the Anbu said in an even voice. Naruto let out a short laugh before signaling that it was okay for the Anbu to touch him. The Anbu quickly grabbed his shoulder and the two disappeared in flash of wind and leaves. As soon as Naruto's vision settled he knew he was. There stood the daimyo with his wife by his side. The daimyo looked very annoyed while his wife looked anxious. As soon as Naruto came into her sight, her eyes flared in anger and she turned to her husband. "That's the boy. He badmouthed me and stole Tora. He has probably been totoring my Tora-kun," the woman said. Naruto understood the first part but not the second part. He hadn't seen Tora since that day. "Uzumaki-san, is this true?" the daimyo said. Now usually Naruto, in the face of authority, would be polite. However, this woman had just accused him of kidnapping and hurting a feline. And that wasn't going to slide with him. "No, it is not true. I haven't seen Tora-chan since I retrieved her for your animal abusing wife. I would also appreciate that if your ignorant wife would not accuse me of abusing any animals," Naruto said. In the background Hiruzen gave a loud resounding face palm. He had figured Naruto would react to this but hoped he would be able to control himself. Obviously it didn't go like that. "Excuse me. Do you know who I am, you disrespectful little brat? I demand you immediately take back those insults and tell us where Tora is," the daimyo yelled. The three ninja that stood behind the daimyo got into an offensive in front of the daimyo. Naruto scoffed at the daimyo's demand. "I know exactly who you are and I honestly don't care. Your wife insulted and that gave me the grounds to insult her back. The fact that you don't understand that make me question your competency as a daimyo. And once again I didn't steal Tora. Naruto said. One of the three ninja with a weird kanji on his headband went to grab Naruto. As soon as he laid his hands on Naruto, he was screwed. Naruto slightly increased his chakra output, which also increased the amount of electricity that was coming off his skin. As soon as the ninja put his hands on Naruto, 20,000 volts were sent coursing through his body. It was only due to his chakra and past experiences with lightning release that saved him. That brat attacked one of your ninja. Arrest him. The daimyo's wife said. The daimyo's personal ninja surrounded Naruto while the Anbu did the same. Hiruzen watched with a sweat drop as the situation continued to unravel. Actually, I did not attack anyone. Your ninja put his hands on me. I have a special condition that makes me secrete a massive amount of electricity. As soon as he put his hands on me, he was screwed. And if you would allow me to talk, I would have told you I may have an idea where Tora is. Naruto said. This immediately caught the attention of everyone in the room. See, this boy kidnapped Tora. That's the way he could know where Tora is. The woman yelled once again. Naruto sighed and grabbed the bridge of his nose as the ninja once again surrounded him. Or maybe, just maybe, I have been hunting Tora for months and know all of her favorite hiding spots. Naruto said. He then quickly swiped his hand over his seal and unsealed a paper and pencil. He wrote down several coordinates which he gave to the Anbu. If you check these, I bet you would find her. Naruto said. The Anbu looked at the daimyo and he showed them away with a wave of his hand. The Anbu left the office, leaving Naruto with the Hokage, the daimyo and his wife. An awkward silence occupied the room. So Naruto-kun, how has your training been? Hiruzen asked as if his boss wasn't standing in front of him. Naruto grinned. Pretty good. My teammates aren't much of a challenge, but on the rare occasions Kakashi fights me, it's challenging. Haven't really learned much though. Naruto said. Hiruzen nodded, knowing that Kakashi wasn't the best hands-on teacher. The Hokage and Naruto continued to have a conversation for several minutes as the daimyo and his wife stood there awkwardly. Finally, after what seemed like hours to the couple, the Anbu revealed themselves with a pissed-off Tora in one of their hands. The daimyo's wife beamed in happiness. Tora-chan, she said while running towards the Anbu. Tora let out a loud hiss before jumping toward Naruto. Naruto caught her and quickly hid her from the enraged woman. What are you doing, you brat? Give me Tora, she yelled. Naruto shook his head negative. No, it's obvious she doesn't want to stay with you, so why not let her go? Why can't you just leave her alone? Naruto pleaded to the ignorant woman. Unfortunately, she completely blocked that out. Because it is my pet. She should obey me, the crazed woman said. At this point, Naruto was getting pissed. The way that woman had referred to Tora as an it had really pissed Naruto off. Tora is a she and is a living creature. She has her own consciousness and can make her own decisions. Naruto said. Suddenly he got an idea. If you believe Tora loves you so much, let her choose. I will place her on the floor, and if she goes to you, she obviously wants to stay with you. If she goes to me, then she wants to be with me. Naruto said. Fine. I know my Tora-chan loves me. The woman said. Naruto grinned and revealed Tora from behind his back. He walked to the center of the room and placed her on the floor. He then took several long strides back and looked at Tora patiently. Tora looked in between Naruto and the daimyo's wife. A look of hesitation was seen in her eyes. Suddenly she let out an audible sigh as she started to slowly trot towards the woman. The daimyo's wife visibly beamed as Tora got closer. Suddenly Tora stopped walking towards the woman and turned. She lifted her leg and a stream of pee came shooting from behind her. The pee impacted against the woman's face, causing her to recoil in disgust. Tora, after revealing her bladder, trotted over to Naruto and jumped into his arms. Her eyes had a level of smugness that spoke volumes about how she felt about her actions. The daimyo's wife had finally managed to wipe off the surprising amount of pee off her face and looked at Tora in shock. Slowly the shock turned to anger. Fine. You can have that ungrateful cat. I can replace her with an animal who is 100 times better. The woman said before charging towards the door. She opened it roughly and slammed it behind her as she stomped through the tower. The occupants of the room stood awkwardly as they could hear the stomps of the angry woman through the tower. Naruto-san. The daimyo said. Hiruzen and Naruto sighed, expecting a punishment. Pissing off the daimyo's wife probably wasn't the best idea. Thank you, the man said while hugging Naruto. Streams of tears slowly slid down the man's cheek as he continued to hug Naruto. Naruto stood there awkwardly as the man continued to cry. He patted him on the back once to make sure he was okay. After several minutes of awkward man hugging, the daimyo let go. You have no idea how many times I have been trying to separate that woman from Tora. I tried freeing her from her cage, but you ninja always managed to catch her. But now she can be free, the daimyo said. The daimyo then crouched down and looked at Tora. I hope you enjoy your freedom, Tora, he said. His face suddenly turned serious before looking at Hiruzen. He gave a short nod before starting to walk out of the door. This will be all, Hiruzen, have a good day, he said before shutting the door behind him. Naruto and Hiruzen stood in the office looking at each other in shock. Tora had fallen asleep in Naruto's arm. Well, that was unexpected. But it turned out better than I thought it would, Hiruzen said. He then grabbed a piece of paper from seemingly out of nowhere before burning it. You can have your full paycheck back, Hiruzen said. Naruto nodded, happy that he could actually save up money now. He then saw Hiruzen pull out a piece of paper with a glint in his eyes. Let's celebrate with a mission. Hiruzen leaned down and pressed a button on his intercom. Kuzi-chan, please send Tazuna-san in and get Wolf-san to get Team 7. Naruto always thought that the third Hokage loved him. This thought was solidified when he awoke from his slight mental breakdown only to be comforted by him. Sometimes there was tough love, but it was still love. But after having to deal with a drunk bridge builder and his very annoying teammates, Naruto thought that Hiruzen was purposefully trying to make his life hell. He wondered if it was payback for doing the same thing to him. After having a month break from all ninja duty, Naruto managed to return to normal. Now this by no means meant he was rid of all of his sadness. Enko's death was still a major source of his nightmare. But now he was able to deal with it. To his teammates he was back to the same old Naruto. But oh, the inside he was changed completely. It had all started when Hiruzen had called in his team and the bridge builder named Tazuna. Tazuna had immediately complained about the team, saying he didn't want a little girl, an emo, a wannabe monk and a cyclops protecting him. Of course he was silent when his bottle of liquor suddenly exploded into several sharp shards, of which one came very close to his genitals. Yeah, that shut him up. The mission was to escort Tazuna to Nami. Easy enough, right? No. Tazuna made the mission even harder by him being drunk. Sakura would ask almost what seemed to be an endless amount of question, which Tazuna would ask with a drunken slur that literally grind against Naruto's eardrums. Kakashi chose to ignore the trio in favor of his book while Sasuke seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. This is where we left our hero. We find him traveling along a long dirt road that was surrounded by trees. Tazuna walked in the center of the group as he continued to sip on his seemingly endless bottle of liquor. Sakura continued to ask him questions about his homeland that Tazuna would half answer with slurs of what could only be guessed to be words. Naruto had been since started to ignore the duo and started to play with his new lightning rod. He would throw it in the air and make it float using his magnetic powers. Sasuke would sometime glance up at Naruto before returning to his thought. Kakashi continued with his regular routine of reading his pornographic book while ignoring his students. As the group continued to travel down the road, Naruto saw something that was very weird. Two small puddles stood in the middle of the road. Now normally this wouldn't be a weird occurrence, but the fire country had been having a mini drought for the past 2 weeks. So those puddles are either a genjutsu or someone is with us, Naruto said. Naruto heard Kyuubi grumbling within his seal. It wouldn't be hard to with you, considering your very minuscule intelligence, Kyuubi said. Naruto pouted at the insult before focusing back on the weird puddles. Naruto looked up towards Kakashi and did not see him reacting to the puddle. He looked over to his teammates and saw the same. Naruto didn't relax though. The group passed by the puddle with no intrusion. Naruto started to relax before he heard a slight change of the wind. He turned around only to see Kakashi getting wrapped in chains that were coming from 2 look-alike ninja. The ninja pulled on the chains and Naruto exploded in a shower of flesh and blood. Naruto heard Sakura scream and heard Tazuna and Sasuke gasp. Naruto watched as the 2 ninja recoiled their chains and readied them for another attack. Naruto grinned and hefted his lightning rod. The two ninja charged towards them with their connected chains ready to attack. Naruto, with an amazing amount of strength, threw his rod in the small loop that connected the two ninja. The rod flew through the loop and got caught on it and embedded itself on a tree. The two ninja were thrown to the ground at the sudden stop of momentum. Naruto disappeared from their sights and reappeared on top of one of the ninja. In his hand was a ball of what could be best described as white lightning. Naruto thrust the ball of lightning into the ninja's face. The ninja screamed as his face was melted off by. Naruto continued to shove the ball of lightning as the ninja body was melted by the extreme heat that the ball of lightning was creating. Eventually Naruto backed off and took time to enjoy his handiwork. Only a tiny bit of melted flesh and a burnt skull remained of the ninja's face. Naruto grinned and turned to the other downed and now shocked ninja. The ninja quickly shook himself out of his shock and disconnected himself from the chain that connected him to his dead comrade. He dropped into an offensive stance as Naruto approached him. The ninja suddenly lifted his claw as 5 kunai impacted against it. He looked towards where the kunai came from. He saw Sasuke preparing another round of kunai. The ninja prepared to dodge the kunai, momentarily taking his focus off of Naruto. And that was his final mistake. Naruto suddenly appeared in front of the ninja in a burst of speed and socked him across the jaw. Before the ninja lost his consciousness, he felt his jaw break into several pieces and knew he had a concussion. Naruto stood over the down ninja with his fist covered in electricity. Sasuke gave him the evil eye. Naruto returned the gesture with a cheeky smile. He then unsealed a spool of ninja wire and started to tie up the enemy ninja. KKK Kakashi-sensei died. Sakura said, still in shock. Naruto laughed inwardly at the girl's shocked appearance. He could sense the electric pulses that made up Kakashi's nervous system several feet away in a forest of trees. He had figured that Kakashi had faked his death in order to test how the three would handle the ninja. Kakashi isn't dead. He's over there in those bushes. Naruto said while pointing towards a random bush. Sakura and Sasuke looked towards the bush and saw Kakashi walk out of it with a sheepish look in his eyes. Sasuke and Sakura looked stunned at the sudden appearance of their dead sensei. They suddenly turned towards the spot where their sensei supposedly died and were surprised. They saw a cut-up piece of log and several empty packets of blood tapped onto the log. Kakashi used his student's distraction to approach Tazuna with a pissed-off look in his eye. Tazuna started to back away slowly but ran into a tree, trapping him. Kakashi got within inches of Tazuna and grabbed him roughly by the scruff of his jacket. Now Tazuna, would you mind explaining to me why 2B rank ninja attacked us on a low-danger C rank mission? Kakashi asked. Tazuna gulped and started to stutter out an answer, but all Kakashi got from it was a garble of unintelligible words. Kakashi sighed and dropped Tazuna. Tazuna let out a sigh that was mixed with relief and defeat. My country is currently in the grip of the shipping tycoon Gato's grip. He has been slowly sucking the money out of Wave. Please, I beg of you to continue this mission. Tazuna asked. Kakashi continued to give Tazuna a scrutinizing look as Tazuna begged for them to continue. After several seconds, he let out a sigh of defeat. Unfortunately Tazuna, I cannot allow my newly made genin go on a possible A-rank mission. You are free to return to Konoha with us, but we cannot continue this mission. Kakashi said. Kakashi turned and signaling his students to follow him as he headed back towards Konoha. Kakashi heard Tazuna sigh from behind him. Sorry Kakashi-san, but I cannot go back with you. My country needs me and I can't abandon them just because you won't guard me. I guess this is where go our separate ways. Tazuna said. Kakashi sighed with guilt but did not turn around. Sakura. Sasuke started to follow him but Naruto stayed. Naruto was currently having an internal argument with Kyuubi. You should go. You may meet some new opponents you can kill. Kyuubi said. Yeah, but I would have to protect someone. That would be boring. Naruto said childishly. Naruto heard Kyuubi release an angry growl. Go on the mission. I cannot stand to watch you do nothing anymore. You have almost killed me with your constant whining about your lost lover and your uselessness. So stop whining and go on the mission. Kyuubi said. Naruto growled at the mention of Anko but remained strong. No, I will not go. Naruto said. Yes, you will. Kyuubi said. No, I will not. Yes, you will. No. Yes. No. Boy, if you don't follow that bridge builder, I will pump you so full of my chakra that you will lose yourself to insanity and destroy this planet. Kyuubi said. Naruto remained quiet at the proclamation. You can do that? Naruto asked. Kyuubi let out a deep laugh. I don't know, but I guess now would be a good time to try now, wouldn't? Kyuubi said. Naruto suddenly had a massive headache as an influx of Kyuubi's chakra rushed into his system. Naruto tried to cap it, but Kyuubi's will was too strong. Eventually Naruto growled in defeat, knowing he was beat. Fine. I'll go. Naruto screamed out loud. The rest of Team 7 and Tazuna looked at Naruto in confusion. Naruto's sweat dropped when he realized that he had spoken out loud. Naruto turned to Kakashi as he felt Kyuubi's chakra retreat through from his system. Kakashi-sensei, I cannot allow myself to abandon Tazuna in his time of need. Regardless of your choice, I will be going with Tazuna. Naruto sighed. Kakashi's eyes narrowed at Naruto's disobedience. Naruto, what you are doing is treason. Are you going to disobey my orders? Kakashi said with a sharp edge in his voice. Naruto shook his head negatively. No, I'm just obeying the little voice in my head. It's currently telling me to help Tazuna out. Naruto said. Kakashi continued to look at Naruto with a sharp look in his eye, which Naruto returned at full force. The two continued to have a fierce stare off as the three pedestrians could feel the tension thicken in the air. Suddenly Kakashi let out a loud groan while Naruto gained a victorious grin. Well, it looks like we will have to protect Tazuna. I cannot leave one of my genin alone. Kakashi said to Sakura and Sasuke. Kakashi then turned to Tazuna. Once the mission is complete, you will be paying the equivalent of AA rank mission, Tazuna-san. Kakashi said. Tazuna nodded enthusiastically, happy that he won't have to go alone anymore. Of course, Kakashi-san. My town would love to compensate you for your efforts. Tazuna said. Kakashi nodded and signaled Tazuna to continue leading them towards Wave. Team 7 followed. Team 7 and Tazuna had continued their journey to Wave Country. They had just got finished being chartered across a lake that separated Fire Country and Wave Country. There they got a glimpse of the bridge Tazuna was building. The size of the bridge was tremendous. It looked to be 3/4 of the way complete. The boat owner dropped the group off on the shores of Wave Country. The group had started to make their way deeper and deeper into it. As soon as Naruto landed on the shores of Wave Country, he felt that something was wrong. The amount of mist that greeted them was unnatural even though they were on the shores of a lake. The air was also filled with chakra, as if a ninja had just had a battle here. Also Naruto had the feeling as if he was being watched by more than one person. It was not a feeling Naruto enjoyed. The group continued to walk through the totally not creepy misty forest. Naruto was inspecting his lightning rod before he saw some shuffling in the leaves. He quickly hefted the sword and sent it flying into the bushes. The rest of the group turned to look at him as went to check in the bushes. Naruto parted the bush to reveal a terrified white rabbit and his lightning rod inches away from piercing its body. Naruto heard a shriek and saw Sakura come rushing past him. She scooped the rabbit into her arms and started to mother her. She then turned to Naruto and gave him a dirty look. What the hell, Naruto? You almost killed this rabbit. Sakura said. Naruto ignored the girl in favor of inspecting his lightning rod. Now usually Kakashi would have noticed the gigantic sword that was currently flying through the air towards his students. He had just gotten a new book and came to a particularly good part. But luckily for him, Naruto was slightly more aware. The oversized sword came within inches from Sakura's neck before suddenly veering right. The blade barely avoided Sakura's neck and went flying into Naruto's hand. You know it's not nice to throw weapons at others. It could hurt someone, Naruto said. Naruto heard a deep chuckling as the mist around him started to thicken. Team 7 got into a triangle position around Tazuna as the mist thickened to the point where no one could see within inches in front of them. That was a nice catch, boy. I am surprised a brat like you could even lift that thing. The voice echoed again. Naruto grinned and slammed the sword into the ground. He grabbed his lightning rod with one hand and prepared it. Yeah, well, I am not your ordinary brat, Naruto said. More chuckling came echoing through the mist. A sudden chill ran down Naruto's spine. 8 places: liver, lungs, spine, clavicle vein, neck vein, brain, kidneys and heart. So many choices. Zabuza's voice ranged through the mist. Team 7 tightened their position around Tazuna as the mist increased to the point where one could not see their own hand if it was put right in front of them. Sasuke's hands started to shake violently as he attempted to tighten the weak grip he had on his kunai. The mist and the massive amount of killer intent that was being blasted at him was bringing up old memories. The memories of his clan being slain came flying into his mind. Their dead and lifeless body were a stark contrast to their horror-stricken eyes. Finally, the memories of his parents' bodies, stained with blood, came to him. His brother standing over them with his Sharingan activated, staring at him with his emotionless eyes. The memories were too much for Sasuke. I can't take it anymore. Sasuke yelled. Sasuke's hand came flying towards his neck as he attempted to kill himself. Sasuke stopped, however, when he felt a small spark originate on his shoulder. He tried to move his arm but found that he couldn't move it. He looked towards his shoulder to find Naruto's hand on it. Stop being a Sasuke. Naruto simply said. This quickly snapped Sasuke out of his suicidal stupor as he growled at the insult. Naruto smirked and prepared his lightning rod with his other hand. Ah, it looks like the little boys want to play ninja. How cute. Zabuza's voice ranged out. The members of Team 7 waited with bated breath as silence permeated the area. Sakura was shaking from head to toe. The massive amount of killer intent was getting to her. Coming from a civilian clan, she had never felt this kind of killer intent. It was a surprise that she was actually able to stay conscious right now. Her eyes were darting right to left in an attempt to find Zabuza's location. It was because of this that she didn't see Zabuza suddenly appear behind her and break into their formation. She heard a scream come from Tazuna and turned. She saw Zabuza preparing to cleave Tazuna in two. She released a scream as Zabuza's sword came down on Tazuna. The sword cleaved through Tazuna in a spray of blood and guts that covered the surrounding members. Zabuza's bloodthirsty, victorious grin was a stark contrast to the horror-stricken look of the majority of Team 7. Sakura had tears in her eyes as she was literally covered in the blood of her client. Sasuke was frozen in his place as the memories of the clan massacre once again were triggered by the massive amount of blood. Kakashi looked shocked and mad at the fact that Zabuza had managed to slip through his guard so easily. And Naruto. Actually, where was Naruto? A spear suddenly ripped through Zabuza's chest. His eyes widened in shock as he felt his body being pumped full of lightning chakra. He looked back and saw Naruto behind him with his lightning rod currently thrusted through his chest. He had a wild grin on his face. Looks like the brat won. Naruto said. Naruto was surprised, however, when Zabuza started to smirk. Naruto suddenly looked down towards his rod and saw that instead of blood, Zabuza was bleeding water. Naruto growled angrily and started to pump chakra into his lightning rod. Zabuza's body started to enlarge as a massive amount of lightning chakra was pumped into him. After several seconds, he then exploded in a spray of water. Naruto growled as he shouldered his rod. He looked at his sensei, who was now looking to be contemplating whether to run or fight. That was actually pretty easy. I expected more. The Kakashi of the Sharingan. Zabuza's voice ranged out again. Kakashi growled and then looked towards his genin. Start to retreat. Be mindful of the area around you. I will hold him off before meeting up with you. Kakashi said. Suddenly Zabuza's laugh rung out once again. Oh, don't think this will be so easy. You have quite the bounty on your head that I think Iwa would enjoy greatly. Plus, I'm pretty sure Gato likes little girls and boys. Kakashi said. Naruto blanched at the crude comment while Sasuke and Sakura shivered. Kakashi growled as he realized that his students couldn't make their escape without at least one of them getting killed. Stay here and getting into formation T. Watch each other's back and do not break formation. Kakashi said while sliding his hand up to his headband. He lifted it and revealed a fully matured Sharingan. Kakashi turned to the mist and started to go through a short chain of hand signs. He took a deep breath before shouting. Wind style. Great breakthrough. Kakashi shouted. A giant gust of wind shot out of Kakashi's mouth. The wind blew the mist apart, making the area more visible. Kakashi looked around the battlefield and was confused when he couldn't find Zabuza. He then suddenly grabbed a kunai from his pouch and blocked a side attack from Zabuza. Kakashi was pushed back several feet as Zabuza's giant sword slammed into his kunai. Kakashi suddenly jumped back and threw his slightly dented kunai towards Zabuza. Zabuza hefted his sword and blocked the kunai. When he dropped the sword, his eyes widened as he saw a dragon made of pure fire coming towards him. The dragon slammed into him, causing a massive fireball. When the fireball dissipated, all it revealed was a slightly steaming puddle. Kakashi looked around and saw Zabuza standing on a lake while going through a chain of hand signs. Zabuza suddenly stopped and the water under him started to shift. The head of a dragon rose out of the water and released a roar that literally shook the lake. The rest of the dragon rose and coiled around the Zabuza. Zabuza released the hand sign and raised his sword. He then pointed it at Kakashi. The dragon released one more might roar before charging at Kakashi. Kakashi sighed before charging at full speed towards the dragon. The dragon opened its jaws to an extreme level and dove towards Kakashi. The dragon crashed down onto Kakashi's position, causing a massive amount of water to be thrown into the air. Zabuza watched curiously as the water was washed away to reveal that Kakashi was no longer there. His eyes suddenly widened, however, when he saw the surface of the lake below him start to bubble. Kakashi busted through the lake's surface with his fist, prepared to deal a massive uppercut. The uppercut connected and sent him flying up into the air. Zabuza righted himself in midair and started to go through several hand signs. He landed solidly on the water's surface and finished his hand signs. He slammed his palms on the water. Before him, a giant wave raised from the depths of the lake. The wave continued to grow until it was 2 stories high. Zabuza raised his hand from the water and thrusted his hand towards Kakashi. The wave shot forward towards Kakashi at slow speeds, slowing, building itself up and up. Kakashi's eyes widened as the 2-story wave turned 5. The wave sped towards Kakashi. The wave was too big to dodge, only leaving Kakashi one option. Kakashi quickly stopped, sending the chakra to his feet and sunk into the water. The wave crashed into Kakashi's previous position, forcing him deeper into the water. Kakashi started to send chakra into his lungs to increase his breathing. He then began to slowly swim back up to the surface. As Kakashi got closer to the surface, he noticed that it was becoming increasingly harder to swim. Why is the water so heavy? Kakashi thought to himself. As he continued to swim, the water around him started to get harder and harder for him to swim him. When he realized what was happening, it was too late. Oh shit, Kakashi thought to himself as he was completely encased in a bubble in water. He watched as the bubble slowly raised of the lake's depth and saw that Zabuza was the one encasing him in the bubble. Kakashi immediately began to struggle in the bubble as he tried to find a way out. Unfortunately for him, Zabuza had been prepared. Zabuza had reinforced the bubble with his chakra, making it almost impossible for him to escape by himself. After several seconds of struggling, Kakashi realized he wasn't going to escape. He looked towards his team and started to make hand signals towards them. On the beach, the remains of Team 7 received the hand signals. Their basics translation were something along the lines of this: "Get thee out of here." Naruto scoffed at the signal. Sasuke looked like he had mixed feelings and Sakura looked like she really wanted to go through with the order. The decision was made for them, however, when they felt a massive amount of killer intent somehow appear behind them. They turned around and saw that a Zabuza clone was currently standing behind them. Sasuke and Sakura slipped into a defensive stance while Naruto prepared his lightning rod. "Looks like the little brats still want to play ninja," the clone said. The clone then lifted his sword and swung it downwards towards the group. Team 7 scattered as the sword crashed into their previous position. Sasuke landed and immediately started to launch a wave of kunai at the clone. The clone tensed his legs and jumped over the wave. While in midair, the clone went through a chain of hand signs and spit out several bullets of water at each genin. One of the bullets managed to clip Sasuke's shoulder, sending him spiraling into a tree. Another water bullet hit Sakura, sending her flying several feet. Naruto began to go through a chain of hand signs as a water bullet sped towards him. He finished as the bullet was only several yards away from him. "Lightning release. Dragon's roar," Naruto said. Naruto then took a deep breath and released a powerful roar that was filled with lightning chakra. The roar ripped apart the water bullet and sped towards the Zabuza clone. The clone raised its sword to block the roar, but the roar was too powerful. The roar sent the Zabuza flying several yards into a tree, making it disperse in a cloud of smoke. Naruto grinned for a brief seconds before remembering his injured teammates. He sighed and made a clone to go check on his teammates. He had a demon to slay and wouldn't allow his teammates' incompetence to hold him back. Zabuza had an intrigued look as Naruto faced him. He watched as Naruto entered a crouched position. Zabuza became even more intrigued as a visible amount of electricity began to dance around Naruto in an intricate pattern. The electricity continued to circle Naruto's crouch form as he prepared for his attack. It took Zabuza every single ounce of his battle experience and instincts for him to dodge Naruto. Zabuza felt a humongous rush of wind come slamming towards. He had to turn his head away just to avoid from being temporarily blinded. When he looked back, he saw an airborne Naruto several inches away from him, ready to pierce him with his lightning rod. Zabuza was forced to duck and roll to avoid the attack, removing his hand from Kakashi's prison. When he got up from the roll, he was immediately confronted by a free Kakashi. Zabuza began to engage Kakashi in a taijutsu fight. But as the fight started to drag out, Zabuza started to notice something. Kakashi had begun to start blocking more and more of his attacks. Eventually it got to the point where Kakashi was blocking and countering each one of his attacks. "Stop copying me, you monkey," Zabuza said. Kakashi gave a small eye smile before ducking under a vicious punch by Zabuza. While in his guard, Kakashi managed to land a heavy uppercut on Zabuza. Zabuza was sent flying back dozens of yards. While in midair he managed to right himself and began a chain of hand signs. Kakashi noticed and started to go through the same hand signs. When Zabuza landed, they both finished the chain of hand signs. Water style. Water dragon bullet technique. Kakashi and Zabuza yelled. The surface of the water shook as two massive dragons made of water busted through it. The two dragons gave a final roar before charging at each other. Zabuza's dragon opened its maw in an attempt to complete swallow Kakashi's. Zabuza was shocked however when Kakashi's dragon flew complete through his, making his attack useless and putting him in the way of a giant dragon made of water. Due to him being shocked, Zabuza had no time to react to the literal speeding dragon towards him. The dragon slammed into him, blowing him back several hundred feet, through several trees before stopping after running into a particularly strong tree. Kakashi quickly shunshined towards the downed Zabuza and prepared a kunai. Zabuza looked up at Kakashi with a scarred look in his eye. "Can you see the fu?" Zabuza was suddenly cut off when several Senbon came flying out the trees and hit Zabuza in the neck. He suddenly slumped over as if he was dead. Kakashi looked shocked but did not lower his guard. He looked towards the direction where the Senbon came from and saw a mist hunter nin coming out of the trees with its hand raised. "I'm sorry to take your kill but I have been tracking this for weeks," the hunter nin said in a neutral voice. Kakashi still looked guarded though. He kneeled down and checked Zabuza's pulse. When he felt nothing, he finally relaxed. He stood back up and looked at the hunter nin. "Thank you for assistance, hunter nin-san," Kakashi said. The hunter nin nodded before grabbing Zabuza and disappearing. Kakashi's eyes narrowed at this but quickly returned to normal. He started to make his way over the lake and back to his team. After several minutes of walking, he arrived at his shocked genin team. They were still covered in the blood of their fallen client. Kakashi sighed and confronted his team. "Well, since our client has died, our mission is a failure. We must return home to inform the Hokage," Kakashi said. He turned to Naruto however when he heard him laughing. "Kakashi-sensei, you're not the only one who can use a henjin substitution," Naruto said. Naruto then waved his hand towards a patch of especially heavy foliage. The thick brush of bushes suddenly disappeared in a cloud of smoke to reveal a Naruto clone and a scared Tazuna. The Naruto clone waved at Team 7 before dispersing itself in a cloud of smoke. "Well guys, since our client is actually alive we can count." Kakashi suddenly fell to the ground with a loud thud. Team 7 plus Tazuna watched awkwardly as Kakashi slept on the forest floor. He let out a particularly loud snore that made Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke and Tazuna sweat dropped. "Tazuna, how far is it to your house?" Naruto asked. "About half a mile. I say you should rape her." "I'm not raping my client's daughter, dumbass. It has been about half an hour since Kakashi defeated Zabuza and fainted. And Naruto has been becoming more and more frustrated ever since Kakashi's fainting spell. First it all started off with who would carry Kakashi. Sakura thought it was too strenuous while Sasuke just plain didn't want to do it. After 15 minutes of arguing, Naruto just said, it, and made a clone. Finally, when Team 7 had arrived at Tazuna's home, Naruto thought he could finally get a break from the constant annoyance of teammates. Instead, as soon as he laid eyes on Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, Kyuubi demanded he mate with her. You know it's a good idea. Kyuubi said. I'm just going to ignore you now. Naruto was snapped out of his conversation with Kyuubi by someone shaking his shoulder. He looked up and saw a concerned Tsunami shaking him. Is something wrong, Tsunami-san? Naruto asked. No. I was just informing you that your sensei is awake and wants you guys. Tsunami said. Naruto nodded his head and watched as Tsunami left the room. He sighed and stood up from his spot. He walked up the stairs and entered the room where his sensei was supposed to be resting. He entered it to find Kakashi sitting propped up against the wall and his two teammates standing besides him. Kakashi looked up when he heard Naruto enter the room. Good, now that Naruto's had arrived we can start. Kakashi said while staring at his team. Due to my overusage of my Sharingan, I'm suffering a severe case of chakra exhaustion. This will render me impaired for about the next 2 weeks. Kakashi said. Sakura suddenly gained a confused look at this. Then what's the problem, Kakashi-sensei? Since Zabuza is dead, I doubt someone else will be chasing after us, so we should have nothing to worry about. Sakura said. Kakashi sighed and then lowered his head. Zabuza is not dead. Kakashi said. Silence permeated the room as the information sunk in. What? What do you mean he isn't dead? Sakura yelled. At the end of our battle I was tired and was suffering under the effects of chakra exhaustion. This caused me not to notice two important things. First, the Hunter Nin's choice of weapon was Senbon. Hunter Nin don't use Senbon to eliminate their targets. Second, he didn't eliminate the body on sight. So this only leaves me to the conclusion that the Hunter Nin was working for Zabuza. Kakashi explained with shame in his voice. Silence permeated the room once again as the devastating information sunk in. What are we going to do then, Kakashi-sensei? Sasuke asked. We train and prepare. I say Zabuza will be back up and running in about 2 weeks. Now I know there isn't much I can teach you in under 2 weeks, but I have to try my best to prepare you guys. So for the next 2 weeks I'll be recovering while training you. Kakashi said. Kakashi grabbed the crutches next to him and slowly got up to his feet. He beckoned to his team to follow him as he hobbled down the steps. Team 7 passed the kitchen, seeing Tsunami cooking a large meal and a small child. Team 7 hobbled through the dense forest that surrounded the house. The team continued to travel until they opened up into a large clearing. Kakashi leaned against a particularly thick tree and looked at his team. Today I will teach you an essential skill for young ninja like yourselves. Some of you may pick it up faster than others. Kakashi said while staring at Sakura, then switching to Naruto and Sasuke. What are you talking about, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked. Kakashi grinned and faced the tree he was leaning on. He placed one of his crutches on the tree. He then placed one of his feet on it. Team 7 watched amazed as Kakashi began to scale the tree without using his hands. Kakashi reached the top before quickly turning and walked back down. He got to the ground and looked at his team. And that's what you call tree climbing? Kakashi said. Kakashi's head turned when he heard Naruto sigh. He watched as Naruto approached a tree. It was his turn to have his eye widen as he watched Naruto begin to walk up the tree. Kakashi watched as Naruto quickly walk up the tree and disappeared into the foliage. Well, it seems like your teammate has a head start. Kakashi said. He reached into his kunai pouch and threw a kunai each at Sakura's and Sasuke's feet. Use these to mark your progress. Other than that, it's trial and error. I'll be back, Kakashi said. He went to the tree where Naruto ascended and started to make his way up it. After several seconds of walking, Kakashi reached the top of the tree. There he found Naruto leaning against one of the thicker branches the tree provided. Kakashi carefully made his way across the branches and sat near Naruto. You know, Naruto, you should really try to interact more with your teammates. You three show an abnormal amount of animosity towards each other, Kakashi said. Naruto let out a small laugh while looking away from Kakashi. We show animosity towards each other because we dislike each other. We haven't liked each other since the academy, and I doubt that will ever change, Naruto said. Kakashi sighed at Naruto's response. You remind me of myself when I was on a genin team, Kakashi said. Naruto perked up at this. I was on the 4th Hokage's team. One of my teammates were a Uchiha and the other was a regular civilian girl. I always used to look down on them due to their lack of skill. Kakashi began. Naruto seemed very interested in his story. One day, my team and I were on an important mission during the Third Shinobi War. The mission was to destroy the Hanabi Bridge. Iwa was using it to transfer troops from Iwa to Kusa. Kakashi said before sighing. During the mission, my teammate, Rin, got captured by Iwa Nin. My other teammate came up with a plan to go off and rescue her. I decided against the plan, deeming the mission more important. My other teammate went against my orders and dashed off into the forest to rescue Rin. Before he left though he commented on my father stating he was the true hero of Konoha. Kakashi said. After thinking for a while, I realized that what he said was true. My father was a hero for saving his teammates. So I decided to rescue my teammate from being killed by an enemy ninja at the cost of my eye. Kakashi said while pointing at his headband. After bandaging the wound we went off to find Rin. We found her tied up in a pit. Now that I look back at it, I should have realized it was a trap. Kakashi said. When we got in the pit, an enemy nin sprung a trap causing a rock fall to fall down on us. It was only due to my teammate's Sharingan that Rin and I were able to escape. He pushed us out the way at the cost of half his body being crushed by a boulder. Kakashi said. Naruto could hear the emotion in Kakashi's voice. With his last dying breath he ordered Rin to implant his newly awakened Sharingan into my eyes. Every day and every time I use this eye, I am reminded by him in one of his most influential phrases. Those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Many Konoha nin and I, myself, live by that code and you should too. Kakashi finished. Silence settled over the two with the only sounds being Sakura and Sasuke training below. Suddenly Naruto released a laugh. Well, I guess I'm worse than trash as I couldn't give two about my teammates. I fight for only my loved ones and they sure as hell aren't one of them. So take your quote and shove it up your. Naruto said. Naruto turned to jump off the tree but stopped when he felt a strong grip on his arm. He looked back and saw Kakashi holding his arm with a harsh look in his eye. You really don't care, Naruto. So you won't care when you're captured by the enemy and are forced to watch your teammates get raped in order to get information from you. You won't care when you, yourself, are locked into a cell and tortured for an unknown period of time with only your teammate to counsel you. You won't care then. Come back to me when you can truthfully answer that question. Kakashi said with a harsh tone in his face. He released Naruto from his grip and watched as he stood there still with his back turned to Kakashi. Kakashi was shocked however when he heard a soft and harsh laugh escape from Naruto. You seem to forget, Kakashi. No matter what situation I am in, I'll never be alone. Naruto said before jumping out of the tree and dashing into the forest. Kakashi lowered his head as Naruto's words registered in his mind. Due to Naruto's container status, he would never be alone. Whether that was good or bad, only Naruto could decide. Naruto was currently sitting in a tree that surrounded a clearing. He seemed to be slowly inspecting his lightning rod. Every once in a while, he would flick it, filling the air with the sound of static. I know you're angry. No, I'm not. I'm just sitting here in a tree, calmly inspecting my weapon. Naruto said. Naruto heard Kyuubi release a laugh. You do realize that I am inside your body. I can sense your emotions. Kyuubi said. Silence was Naruto's response. Suddenly Naruto released a loud roar-like yell and jumped down from his tree. Who the does he think he is? Lecturing me on how to live. That pathetic lonely pervert. Naruto yelled out. Stop bitching and whining. Why don't you go blow something up or kill someone? Kyuubi suggested. Naruto gained a thoughtful look at this. You know what? That actually sounds like a good idea. Naruto said. Naruto positioned himself in a comfortable stance. He took a deep breath as several spikes started to ignite from his skin. He raised his lightning as the sparks around him became more visible. Naruto continued to raise his rod as the electricity around him started to dance in an intricate pattern. Naruto smirked, released a loud roar and slammed his lightning rod into the ground. With the rest of Team 7. After Naruto escaped into the forest, the rest of Team 7 returned back to Tazuna home to eat. They were all currently digging into the feast that Tsunami had prepared. Well, Tsunami-san the Lee, Sakura was suddenly interrupted when a bright flash of light blinded everyone in the room. Kakashi shot up from his chair in a defensive position as the giant amount of light filled the room. After several seconds, the light disappeared to reveal a shocked room of people. What the hell wa? This time Tazuna was interrupted by a huge clap of thunder. The thunder shook the house as it temporarily robbed everyone of their hearing. Everyone minus Kakashi fell to the ground as the volume of the sound caused their ears to bleed. What the hell was that? Kakashi asked himself. The clearing where Naruto was can no longer be called a clearing. A crater would have been more appropriate. The crater was several feet deep and several yards wide. The outer rim of it was burning. Naruto laid in the center of the crater with his hair standing on end and his clothes covered in dust and ashes. Note to self. I am not immune to lightning. Naruto said. Naruto tried to raise himself from his position. A flash of pain forced him to release a growl and stop his attempts. Well shit. Naruto said. Naruto forced himself onto his stomach and began to crawl out of the crater. After several minutes of painful crawling, Naruto managed to crawl out of the crater and prop himself onto one of the remaining trees. He stared up at the sky as his breath evened. Just need to rest, Naruto said before fainting on a tree. When Haku was a child, she never expected to be where she was right now. As a child, she had an air of innocence that allowed her to block out the horrors of the bloody mist. But when one day that all changed when her father discovered her bloodline ability. He charged in one day and brutally slaughtered his mother and turned onto her. It was only due to her bloodline ability that she was still alive today. She still remembered the frozen horror-stricken faces of her father and his friends. That was the same day Zabuza found her. He took her in and trained her to be the perfect weapon. A medic nin with the precision to kill anyone with only a single senbon. The speed that would trick a high-level chunin. And a deadly bloodline that allowed her to outshine most young shinobi. Now most would think that someone as strong as Haku sounded would go on their own. But Haku couldn't. She owed her life to Zabuza. He trained her to be the perfect shinobi tool. She was his tool. He was free to do whatever he wanted to her. And that was why Haku was currently out so early in the morning. She was trying to collect some herbs to help speed up Zabuza's healing process. Haku was traveling through the forest while idly picking flowers from the ground. She stepped out of a particularly strong cluster of trees and stumbled upon a shocking sight. She now stood on the edge of a crater. The crater seemed to be at least 8 feet deep while being over 30 feet wide. The ground in the container were scorched black. This must be where the lightning struck last night. Haku though to herself. She had been treating Zabuza last night when a loud strike of lightning literally shook the building. Haku looked across the crater to see if any of the herbs she needed were there. She was surprised however to find an unconscious or sleeping blonde lying against the tree. Due to his state of clothing, she figured he was unconscious. That was on of the ninja that Zabuza attacked. Haku said. Her hand immediately slipped into her sleeve as she clutched one of her senbon. She slowly started to cross the crater with her vision set to Naruto. After what seemed to be an eternity, Haku got within a foot of Naruto. She pulled her hand out of her sleeve with her senbon in her grasp. She was poised to strike but hesitated. The desire to kill the pull had suddenly vacated her body. This is what Zabuza had described to be her one flaw. Her lack of passion for killing. Haku never wanted to kill unnecessarily. And killing an unconscious boy was starting to become a difficult choice for her. Fortunately for her, a decision was made for her. The senbon started to shake violently in her hand. The senbon suddenly flew out of her hands and towards Naruto. She tried to lunge for it but she was too slow. She watched helplessly as the senbon sped towards Naruto. The senbon got within centimeters of Naruto's throat before it stopped suddenly. Naruto opened his eyes suddenly and looked down at the senbon. He then looked up into Haku's eyes. Haku suddenly jumped back into the center of the crater, reached into her sleeve to pull out another senbon. She pulled it out and threw it towards Naruto. The senbon that was floating near Naruto's throat turned around. Suddenly the senbon rocketed towards Haku's senbon, knocking out of the air. Haku, seeing that her attack had been blocked, reached into her basket to pull out another senbon but a giant puff of smoke clouded her vision. She quickly fell into a defensive position as the smoke surrounded her completely. She slowly reached into her basket to pull out another senbon but a voice stopped. If you move another muscle, I'll skewer you like a fish. Naruto's voice ranged out through the smoke. Haku was hesitant to obey at first, but as the cloud of smoke cleared, her mind was made up. Surrounding her was what seemed to be hundreds of thousands of different weapons ranging from senbons to kunais. Naruto was still sitting in his previous position but now had his lightning rod pointed at Haku. Well, I never expected to meet you here, Hunter Nin-san. Naruto said. Haku tensed at the Naruto's voice. Suddenly the weapons started to vibrate as itself they wanted to move from their current position. I would advise you not to make any sudden movements. My lapse in control may be the cause of your death if you do so. Naruto said while standing up. He entered the crater and started to walk towards Haku. He got right in front of her and looked her in her eyes. He smirked when he saw the minute of amount of fear present in her eyes. Well, it's strange meeting you out here, Hunter Nin-san. Naruto said. Naruto grinned increased when he saw the amount of fear increase. He started to walk around her as if he was inspecting her. Well, at least my answer on whether she was a male or female was answered. And I was not disappointed. Naruto thought to himself. Or at least thought he was thinking it to himself. I wholeheartedly agree. Why don't you take her right here on the forest floor like the bitch she is? Kyuubi spoke within Naruto's mind. Inwardly Naruto sighed at Kyuubi's comment. Did you have mommy issues when you were younger? Because you show a blatant lack of respect for the female. Naruto said. I am an entity made from hate and chakra. I have no mother. Kyuubi said. Silence came between the two. Outside of Naruto's conversation, Haku was nervously watching Naruto. Internally she was berating herself on being caught so easily while on the outside was watching Naruto. She saw that he seemed to be distracted and that's when he decided to make her move. Her hand struck out with a ice senbon quickly forming at her fingertips. Naruto quickly zoned out from his conversation with Kyuubi and saw a hand quickly streaking towards his neck. He sighed quickly before closing his eyes. Haku let off a small grin past her impassive face when she saw Naruto seemingly give up and close his eyes. Her grin immediately fell, however, when she felt several dozen painful pricks appear on her skin. She watched shockingly as her arm seemed to lose all momentum before harmlessly bouncing off of Naruto's chest. You're not the only one who knows how to target pressure points. Naruto said. Haku was about to respond but stopped when she felt several more pricks on her neck. She felt helpless as her eyes became heavy. She fell to the ground unconscious after only several seconds. Naruto released another sigh as the enormous amount of weapons fell to the ground. He made several shadow clones and ordered them to start resealing all of the weapons. He instead went over to the girl and proceeded to drag her over to the closest tree. He tied her up tightly with several feet of ninja wire. After making sure she was tied tightly and there was no chance of her escaping, Naruto decided it was best to wake her up now. He placed his hand in the center of her chest and sent a short electrical burst through her body. Her reaction was immediate. Her head shot up as she frankly started to look around in an attempt to figure out where she was. When she realized where she was and what happened to her, she quickly hung her head in shame while mumbling something about Zabuza. Hello, Hunter Nin-san. So nice of you to try to kill me while I'm asleep. I just love it when that happens to me. Naruto said in a sarcastic voice. The girl remained quiet with her head held down. Naruto gave off a slight grin at her act of defiance. It seems I would have to use others' methods to make her talk. Naruto said to himself. In the back of his mind, he could hear Kyuubi grumbling about him being a hypocrite or something along those lines. Haku felt a soft touch against her skin that sent a shiver down her spine. She refused to look down to acknowledge Naruto's touch. You know, Hunter Nin-san. Naruto started off with. Naruto began to slowly rub his hand across the girl's skin while releasing a small electrical current. This current was meant to relax the girl's muscles and give her a small amount of pleasure. And by the shortening of her breath and the slight smell of hormones in the air, it was working. It's not very nice to ignore me. Naruto finished while sending a large jolt of electricity into the girl. The girl's muscles began to lock up and spasm rapidly as the overstimulation took effect. Her head shot back as her body began to flail around in her bindings. After several seconds of wild flailing, the girl finally managed to gain back control of her own body. She shot Naruto a murderous look as he calmly stared at her with an air of aloofness around him. So are you ready to talk? Naruto said. The girl still remained silent, which caused Naruto to smirk. His hand slowly started towards the girl's neck to shock her again. Before he was interrupted by a strong gust of wind that came from the girl's mouth. The gust of wind sent him flying across the clearing and into a tree. As soon as the wind hit him, Naruto knew that something was wrong. His chakra had felt like it had been drained from his body. A sudden tiredness fell upon him. And he could feel his electrical output decrease immensely. Naruto slammed harshly into the tree back first as the wind jutsu drove him against it. After several seconds of groaning, Naruto found the energy to look up to see where his opponent was. But when he looked up, the girl was gone. All there was left was a pile of ice and a bundle of ninja wire. Naruto sighed in relief when he saw that the girl had fled from the area. He knew that he was in no condition to fight right now. His chakra levels felt extremely low and it took an extreme amount of efforts to even move his body. After several minutes of painful exertion, Naruto managed to use the last bit of his chakra to activate his chakra cloak before succumbing to darkness. Naruto was awakened to the sight of Kyuubi looking down upon him with an amused look in its eyes. What the hell are you doing with my chakra, Kyuubi? Why do I feel so weak all of a sudden? Naruto yelled. Kyuubi growled at Naruto's accusations. Before you go accusing me of messing up your chakra, why don't you think about your fight for a second and use the smallest amount of intellect I know you barely have? Kyuubi yelled. Naruto grumbled at Kyuubi's insult before deciding to do as it said. He slowly began to analyze his encounter with the girl. Let's see, my chakra levels and lightning abilities were working fine. I even managed to send an electrical shock into her. Everything was fine until she used that wind jutsu on me. Naruto said out loud. And what element is weak against wind jutsu? Kyuubi said as if he was talking to a child. It immediately hit Naruto. Since his body was so attuned with lightning chakra, his body acted like a lightning jutsu when the wind jutsu hit him. So are you telling me that a simple C-rank jutsu can leave me in this condition? Naruto asked. Yes, brat. What did you expect? I told you're basically a living lightning bolt. Naruto didn't reply immediately as he was still in shock. He had now discovered a glaring weakness that could be easily used against him. If he ever met a nin that knew a wind release above C rank, he was surely dead. Well, is there any way to stop this from happening? Naruto asked. Yeah, it's very simple. Don't get hit by a wind jutsu. Kyuubi said. Naruto sighed in frustration when he realized he wasn't going to get a straight answer from Kyuubi. The huge glaring hole in his defense was really bothering him. While wind release users are extremely rare, the jutsu aren't as rare. Any fresh out of academy genin can learn a great breakthrough. And if he ever got hit by one, he was basically screwed. His lightning abilities would be nullified and he would be barely able to move. No matter which he put it, he was screwed as soon as a wind jutsu even whiffs him. Naruto released a chuckle when he realized what his only solution was. So Brad, did you figure out a way around your weakness or are you just going to curl up and die? Kyuubi asked. I do have a solution and you already said it. It's really as simple. Naruto started. I just gotta make sure I can't be hit.